Yo, what is going on, people? Welcome to Throwdown Your Questions, episode 440. I'm your host, Tony Polanco, and tonight I'm joined by Emilio Lopez,
Sup, people? How's it going?
Carlos Romero,
Yo, yo.
and Brett Murdoch.
What up?
All right, people, back with another one. Short a couple cats. Chris is indisposed. Yeah,
Yo, man, we are fatherless.
yeah, fatherless again. Yeah, no Adam, no Chris. You know, we're also Britishless, no Brian, but Brian said he'll be back sometime in July. You know, he's doing his moving. Very curious to see how things are going on his end.
He's doing his James Bond thing, man.
Yeah.
We're also maidenless, but I think we've come to terms with that.
Yes, we have. All right. Without further ado, let's just get into it. Questions for tonight, man. Let's start off with Mr. J. Shep. He goes, Bethesda accidentally announced that Starfield physical copies will not have a disc, and I assume this includes the steelbooks as well. Will this have any effect on sales? All right, has anybody heard this? That apparently the physical copy of Starfield will not have a disc in it. My question is, or do you just get an empty box? Here's the thing. For steelbooks, for collection editions, we know this happens, but apparently this is the normal edition of the game.
I thought they were just gonna do the silly thing like they always do, where they just have an executable that literally sends you to the store to download it. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. For you guys in the chat, so the regular I don't know anything about this. I literally just heard this from the question. Does the regular normal version of the game come with a disc? Yes,
I don't
or no?
think so. I think the game is itself discless on all. They will sell you a box with a code.
My question: why?
I mean, dude, it's been going this way forever because it saves on manufacturing costs.
What's the point of, as a consumer, what's the point of buying an empty box?
What's the point of buying a disc that just takes you to a website and downloads a thing?
Oh no, listen, I'm the digital guy, I get it, but I'm like, if you're a presumably people buy physical things to have a collection, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing. The disc, as he said, the disc is just an executable.
Yeah, no, I get that, but again, I'm trying to see this from the physical collector's point of view. What bonus is it for them if they don't even have a disc?
There is none.
Fucking wild, man.
I mean, here's the thing. I get it, and I get the anger about it, but I also do understand we got here through baby steps kind of thing. What is the bonus to having no disc for collectors? None, really. What is the bonus of having a disc that doesn't have a game on it? Also, I guess really none. So it's one of those things that it's a difference, but the practical difference is kind of negligible. Yeah. And man, it's been going this way for years. Not that I'm not upset about this. I'm upset about that. I was upset about this a decade ago when it fucking mattered. Now it's just I bought the digital console because, bro, who cares anymore?
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of people still do. And Brett, just to be clear, I am with you 100%. Remember, I went all digital 10 years ago. And I'm like, wait, you mean the disc doesn't, I still have to, when I learned you have to install the entire game on a hard drive, I'm like, there's no point buying physical anymore. None whatsoever, right? In my opinion.
Well, dude, it even went from there's the game, the data on this disc is locked behind a thing that unlocks it, to there is no data on this disc. It is just the executable that downloads the actual fucking game.
Yeah.
And to which I'm like, yeah, okay, I understand that you don't have the thing in your hand, but the thing in your hand it's a fake. It's a MacGuffin, right? Mm-hmm. It's like when Indiana Jones, when he steals the idol and replaces it with a bag of sand, and you're upset that somebody stole the bag of sand. It wasn't the thing that it was placeholding, though. It was a useless thing. It sucks. It really does suck. I'm not happy about it, but even in a collector's edition, would it be great if we could get a disc? Yeah. Will that disc actually do anything? No, it's all fucking Disneyland Imagineering, man. It's all a smoke show.
Yeah, no,
it doesn't matter.
I 100% agree. It's just, correct me if I'm wrong here. I've never heard of this being done for a normal version of a game. Collector's editions, we've heard about this for years. I've never heard of this for a normal game before. I know Nintendo does that shit sometimes on the Switch
I
for
think this is
obvious
just
reasons.
the next step.
You know,
I think it's just.
Yeah.
I think that they just did away with
that was my question. It's just the next
facade.
step. Yeah,
they just did it well. I think from their point of view, they're like, can we just be honest here and not sell you a pretend disc? And everyone's like, I'm mad. There's no pretend disc with this. But like, yeah, I mean, I get it, but I'm upset and not upset because again, we're just calling a lie a lie. Like do you really want the hooker to kiss you on the mouth and tell you she loves you? Does it matter? Because you know it's not fucking true.
Yeah, don't do that. By the way, guys, seriously, don't. Don't.
Yeah.
Never kiss a hooker. Yeah, never, please. Redfall was discless or without a disc. Okay, so I guess there's precedence for it. You know, just what I told you guys, man. Those discs mean nothing. You know, they haven't meant anything for a while.
When they used to sell PC games physically, most of them didn't even have discs.
Yeah, PC did kind of start that, didn't they?
Dude, I remember the first time I bought a box and it was just a piece of paper with a Steam code. I'm like, the fuck is this?
Yeah, I guess consoles are now fully going to... But again, with consoles, we've already seen it with collector's editions, which I always find funny. It's like collector's edition, no disc. Like, interesting. You know?
Yeah, the only way that I can understand someone wanting this is just to have a physical representation either in their shelf, in their set, or wherever.
Even if it's just an empty box.
Yeah, even if it's an empty box.
Wow. It's interesting.
Because I mean, think about it like this: you see the videos of the people that have those man caves that are ridiculous collections, like all the Nintendo NES or SNES or N64 boxes and stuff with all that. And before, when you see that video, it's sort of like a Schrodinger's cat. Is there a cartridge inside? We don't know. So for them, it's sort of like that in between where it's like, I guess, there's a box.
Yeah.
Something could be in it, something could not, but no one's going to really notice. It looks good on the shelf. And I guess that's the biggest incentive for people.
Yeah. This might be a side, but I want to comment on this. Kishak goes, most PC users today don't even use disk drives anymore. Got a quick story for you guys about that. So in, what year was it? I think it was 2015. I wanted to build a new PC, and I had Mr. Torrance Davis help me out with parts, right? And he insisted, Tony, you got to get a disk drive for it. I'm like, Torrance, I haven't used a disk drive in a PC in fucking years, bro. He's like, no, you never know. You never know. So, he's the goddamn God. You got to listen to him, right? So I built my PC with the disk drive. You know how many times I used it? For 5 years? You know how many times I used it? Zero. Never, ever used it. So, obviously, with my new PC, no, didn't bother. It's a fucking waste of time. Anyway, going back to what we're talking about, Blitz goes, if I'm a collector and I buy a collector's edition and they give me a disc case, just give me a fucking disc too. Yeah, that's the general sentiment from, physical cats. It's like they want and I get it. I'm not even a physical guy anymore, but I get that. I'm like, if you're buying a collector's edition, even if it's just a fucking, again, we all know that this doesn't mean anything. It's just an executable, as Brett says. We all know that, but it's a collector's edition.
Okay, hold on. There's a way to change that too. Here's an idea. Since you're only giving a fucking digital art book and soundtrack for some fucking reason, like a digital art book is just a file of JPEGs. But moving on, if you're doing that, put it on a disc and put that in there, right? Like, I may not own the game, but at least let me own the bonus soundtrack I paid $20 extra for, apparently. Because much to my horror, because I don't think anybody actually, please, if anybody gives a fuck about your digital art book or soundtrack, please tell me, because I don't think fucking anybody does. But
what a waste of time that shit is,
dude. Like, we get to games that aren't even pretending anymore. Like, at least usually they're like, oh, you get this skin and this mount and this gun and a bunch of other stuff, and a mount, and a fucking digital art book and soundtrack. Now there are games where literally like the digital deluxe $20 more version, the only extra thing you get is the digital art book and soundtrack. And I'm like, cool. So you threw the assets you already had into a file and gave me the great grace of being able to download it. I feel honored. I really do.
Yeah, shit's crazy.
That shit is pretty much like in the manufacturing industry, it would be like considered just like byproduct.
Yeah, didn't Final Fantasy 16 come with some digital shit? I'm like, what is this? It's just taking up.
Yeah,
space,
no, actually, that was the one that I didn't know where I'd seen it, but no, that placed it. That was the only difference for Final Fantasy was the fucking art book and the soundtrack.
Art book, quote unquote.
Yeah,
art book.
Yeah, it's not a book. It's a series of files, you guys, and like you don't really like. I didn't buy that version, so I don't know. But like most of the time, they don't really compile it into a cohesive book.
Yeah, no.
Like it's just like renamed series of images in a slideshow that are kind of quickly pasted together.
Yeah. So.
Oh shit, we lost one.
Yeah, we're
down to it. And Carlos is unstable. His internet is unstable.
Hey, listen, man. Me and you, we can hold this shit down. We're good. We
got this. I can argue with just myself, actually.
Again, I think because this news just came out during the weekend. That's why I haven't heard too much. But let's just be honest, man. At the end of the day, the only people that are really going to be complaining about this aren't even going to be the people that are going to be buying Starfield. It's going to be the Sony ponies going, look at you fucking guys. You don't even get the real disc. Wait until the day Sony games start doing that shit. Because, listen, it's all happening. Everybody's going to be doing this shit eventually, Kishak goes, do you guys consider the convenience of digital valuable enough that it isn't worth putting a disc inside a console?
No.
Do you consider the convenience of digital valuable enough that it isn't worth putting the disc?
Yes, for me, yes. It's like, do you consider the convenience of?
Yeah, can you reframe it quick? I'm sorry, Kishak, I'm having a little bit of a problem understanding.
I think I understood it.
It's a double negative, man.
No, he says, do you consider?
Big Dan says your phrasing gives me a headache. I love you guys, but just reread before you type it all in. But yeah, so what is he trying to ask exactly, Carlos?
Like, is the convenience of buying a digital game more valuable than buying the physical game and having to put that into the disc tray?
Yes.
Yeah.
I made that revelation. I think it was Saints Row 2, right? Like one of the first games I bought digitally, right? And it was a trip. I'm like, I don't have to put a disc in. I could just turn the console on, turn the controller on, fire up the game. And it was still weird. I was like, because I was still like on the fence. I'm like, I don't know, digital games is kind of weird. But then I was like, that's kind of convenient. And then what really like, it didn't set me over the top because it's still the PS3 generation. Assassin's Creed 3, I know the game was trash, but I was hyped. I loved me some Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed 3 came out. I was ready to go to GameStop to buy it, but it was a fucking snowstorm, right? I'm like, shit, what am I going to do? I guess I got to buy it digitally,
remember.
Yeah, so I, midnight, download, wake up the next day, I'm like, I didn't have to go to a store and there's a game in my console. This is crazy. So yeah, it's convenient, man. It really is,
I used to buy we used to do the midnight releases sometimes, but then for other games I used to just order them on Amazon. Yeah. And sometimes those things would take forever. They wouldn't they would have a release date delivery, but they wouldn't come out release date, man.
Yeah, Amazon in general. I mean, I don't know if things are better now, but like when it comes to pre-ordering shit, take at your own risk, man. You may get that shit whenever. Like if I order some random shit right now, it'll come here tomorrow, right? But if I pre-order something, we'll see. Amazon's like, we'll see about that, buddy. I'm still salty at them for taking 2 fucking weeks to bring in my Lord of the Rings 2 Towers DVD, man. My boy Mike was making fun of me for 2 fucking weeks. I got my disc. I went to the store. Like, okay, bro. I was pissed off, man. I'm still mad at Amazon. I pre-ordered fucking Shenmue 1990, like 2009, whatever the fuck that game came out. 2001, I believe, right? I pre-ordered that shit. The game didn't come out. I didn't get it for like 2 or 3 weeks. Meanwhile, it was there in the stores, you know? Fucking Amazon sucks when it comes to pre-ordering stuff, man.
Well, not anymore. I mean, that's like over 20 years
so
ago.
Has it changed? Because I don't pre-order from them anymore because of those incidents.
I mean, usually you get them, around the time when you're supposed
around
to
the time.
I mean, yeah, you get, it's not like you don't get like unless you're like there's only. Yeah, I've never really had any issues with it.
Yeah, I've always had issues with pre-ordering from Amazon. Always gets late. Manny, what's your take on this whole Starfield regular game not having a disc? And I ask you because you're still. I think you may be the only guy on Throwdown that still buys physical discs.
I still buy physical discs, but I also don't buy. Like, in other words, like the one thing about it is that my buying habits is also not a lot of it either.
Yeah.
So I have physical discs, but I don't have I'm not buying every single game that has one. So, I mean, like, I don't know how much of that is true, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I also would say that not every single game is just an executable file that's downloading off of their website. They could just have, like, a lot of times something is still printed on there, but I would have to say when it comes to the realm of Microsoft, if they're saying that, what was it, Redfall? Was it Redfall that didn't have a disc?
Yeah.
It seems to be an initiative by Microsoft.
Could be, yeah. An initiative by the software company?
Yes, but essentially by them being like, "Hey, listen, we're just gonna do it this way."
Yeah,
I think
I got it, Tony. Don't worry.
Yeah.
All right. Because nobody else seems to be doing anything like this, except for them. So, but it also means that they could be lazy and not have a gold version of the disc, a gold version of the of final code for at least. What do they call it? Going gold, a gold version of whatever the version of Starfield is. So in other words, allows them to develop the game all the way up until like the day the damn thing is supposed to go live.
Wasn't there something about
as opposed to having an endpoint where like an initial endpoint to allow for them to print up discs. So if they're not worrying about any of that. That means that they just have to. They could literally develop. They could develop it all the way up to the wire, which is a little bit iffy to me, because it means that it just gives them more leeway to essentially not try to make a fully completed game. At least the older versions of any of those Bethesda games, they were in, as glitchy as they were in a playable state. You could play through the whole game. So now it's like, oh no, it's like the whatever, they can just develop it all the way up to the wire, and then, but not Manny, making any commitments.
They already do that even when a game goes gold, because what a day patch is for.
Yes.
Day one patches.
But that's it. Yeah, that's the day one patch. But the thing is that they still need to hit a deadline. In other words, this thing just means that they can have a shorter deadline to where they deliver.
Yeah, but I'm saying this doesn't stop that from happening either, and it hasn't.
No, this doesn't. It doesn't stop that from happening. But at least you have a version of it that you can play. Like, in other words, it's not like, hey, we're just going to continue develop. There still has to be an endpoint.
They do that. There is no endpoint anymore. That's the problem.
Yeah, going gold doesn't mean the game is finished anymore, now. Yeah.
I know, but it does mean that they have to have something ready to put on the disc.
No, it doesn't. Well, it just means that they put whatever they have on the disc.
In this situation, if there is no disc, they have nothing to. They don't need to essentially ship something on there, because if like, when it comes to the the going gold term, usually that's like a month or two like before, or a few months before they actually release the game, allowing time for them to.
That's how it used to be, but nowadays, even if a game goes gold, they're still developing. Development doesn't stop on a game when the game goes gold anymore. It keeps developing, you know. So that's why I'm saying it doesn't matter when a game goes gold, or if a game goes gold, it doesn't matter anymore, because they always develop up until the end, and they keep on going past the release date. That day one patch, and this is why I was telling people on Twitter, because people get till this day get so upset when a game has a day one patch. Nearly every game has a day one patch. I can't think of a game that hasn't had a day one patch. They all do. Did
Final Fantasy say they didn't have a patch? Well, or somebody claimed they didn't have a patch.
Well, I think that's where the controversy came from. For whatever reason, Square Enix or the developer decided to go, we won't have a day one patch. Then they did. How about you just don't say it? You know? How about just don't say it? You know, and release it anyway, because people are used to it. But again, but at the same time, there's other people that are upset because there's day one patch. Like, again, releasing a game doesn't mean the game's done. Not anymore. That's not the way it works.
But
you know?
No, there's no reason not to have a day one patch.
But in this situation, if there is or isn't a disc, all of this sounds like rumors to me. I haven't heard any sort of official statement on this. So, if there is no disc, what are you buying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The thing about it is, like, obviously, if there at least should be something inside of the case besides just the case.
I mean, again, PC users have been being sold empty boxes for a decade now.
Well, no, they haven't been. The thing about it is, like, in fact, when they first started doing that, a lot of the PC gamers got really pissed about it. So it's not like it's not like people just went, oh well, there's nothing inside the box. No, they fucked.
No.
They got upset, but they're used to it. They're used to it now.
Hold on. Yeah. I speak for the lore. I mean, the Brian right now.
Okay.
Like, we did get upset. We all got fucking upset, and we pitched a huge bitch fit. And the console gamers at the time went, you're overreacting. And we went, no, we're not. And they went, nah, fuck it. Nah, it's fine. And the industry moved on without us.
I think the one thing.
By the way, Manny, real quick, it's not a rumor. Bethesda support, their tweet said, hello, all physical editions include a code for the chosen platform. There are no physical discs.
Okay, so
but at least to my point, if you're a collector, or you're going to be happy with just an empty box.
I don't know. I mean, if you're a collector, do you just want an empty box? To be honest, they should be giving you something else if there's nothing inside the box.
Is it going to be $60 or $70?
And the
probably going to be $70. You motherfuckers pay $70 for an empty box. Ain't that something?
Isn't that fucking something? Somebody should the fans of the thing should raise some fucking hell for that shit. Be like, yo, then what the fuck am I buying? Yeah. Okay. So it's like, okay, obviously the Microsoft and the Sony thing, where there's no actual digital, there's a digital copy, and you're paying $70, but yet on PC you're not. Same game.
First they came for our instruction manuals, and then they came for our box art and add-ons and leaflets. Finally, they've come for our discs.
Yes.
I've been yelling this whole time.
But
I feel like the guy on the corner,
it's a good thing. It's a good thing I have absolutely no interest in Starfield. So,
But I don't know if it's indicative of Starfield or the industry. And quite frankly, again, at this point, oh no, you took away the fake thing that you had pretended to give me.
I mean, to be honest, I feel like they cut the cord on that because they realized they couldn't do a gold edition of that game.
Well, again, they just release whenever they do a quote unquote gold edition, they just throw whatever broken ass build and say that's the my tinfoil hat is that I think they because they couldn't they felt like they couldn't deliver at least a functioning version of the game to put on disc. They just said, "All right, you know what? They don't even have a look at Cyberpunk. Look at what that shit shipped out.
That was on a disc. Yeah, that was on a disc. That's right.
Yeah, that was on the disc too. But at least you could have the evidence of there being a broken version of the game.
Here's what I think. I'm not entirely sure that it's going to be $70. Can somebody confirm that for me?
Let's look. Is it on pre-order yet? I'm not.
Yeah, is the thing on pre-order?
Wait, which game?
Starfield.
Which game did you guys talking about?
I thought people already pre-ordered it.
I don't know.
I mean, the controller's over $70.
Starfield on Amazon, $69.99.
Okay,
so it's $70. All right, so $70 for nothing. Not even getting anything. And I'm sure you don't even get a discount for buying it on Xbox.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, same on Best Buy.
Well, the only discount that you get is if you decide to get Game Pass.
Yeah.
Because it's actually cheaper than buying the actual game. So
Hey, again, like
you see them tightening the reins, right? You see what they're doing.
Yeah, Brett, what's up?
They're like, hey, our physical editions are $70, but
you know what? They were the fucking, and I am gonna throw out the fanboy on this one and come out completely biased, but like, I was bitching about this shit when everybody when fucking Sony was like, games are gonna be $70, and they're like, oh, it's only gonna be Sony games, and it's only gonna be Sony and EA games. Now I was like, no, you watch. This is the big move that causes an avalanche industry-wide. It's going to cause all games to be fucking $70, and people acted like I was fucking crazy.
Not anybody on this panel.
Hold on. Yeah. But now here we are, Microsoft being the last one to adopt that shit, and everybody's coming at them like they're out for fucking blood. Like, what the fuck? Y'all going to be totally like okay when a company decides to unilaterally raise the price across the entire fucking industry, and then get upset when the last person who adopts it? The fuck is wrong with you?
Nah,
people?
Brad, they got upset the first time this happened. What company was it?
Yeah, it was upset
EA.
Above the board.
EA or Ubisoft.
It was EA the first one to do it.
And they rescinded it.
Yeah, they rescinded it. That's right.
They rescinded it.
It was a basketball game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
But talk about even less, which is literally just the last game with a roster change in it. They shouldn't even be charging $60 for that shit.
Yeah, but to be honest, to be fair, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, people. I haven't seen anybody upset that this game's going to cost $70. They're upset. They're upset that it's 30 frames a second. That's what I've seen.
I mean, there's a lot to be upset about, but I guess it comes in waves. I guess once they get it, they'll be like, "What the fuck?"
People are going to be upset over the bugs that are eventually going to show up on the video.
Yeah, there's going to be.
There's going to be a lot of
stuff. It's the least buggy Bethesda game.
Yep.
So we still don't know if it's going to be playable.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's because they threw everybody at it. I mean, if you have every single one of your studios at it, sure, you can make make an open world that's the game that's not as buggy as the previous.
I mean, the fact that all games release in a Bethesda state of quality on release, like, I don't know what to make of this Brave New World, man.
Well, yeah. Now every game is about as buggy as Bethesda games.
Yeah, if Bethesda comes out with a game less buggy than normal Bethesda games, when other games are coming out Bethesda level buggy, I'm calling simulation. We live in the fucking Matrix.
I mean, Cyberpunk launched at lower than a Bethesda level.
Oh my god! Yeah, but that to me, that's still like, wow, that was a big deal, and it felt like a big deal. But you still see like the reverberations of that shit in the industry today.
As broken as any Bethesda game is as launch, you can still play through the fucking game.
Well, Fallout 76 was a little rough at launch. I feel like I remember a couple people having some real hard times.
I feel like that one is a little bit of a different case because that's that whole online thing that they're trying to do. That's like Bizarro World for them.
Yeah, well, also,
they're like, we have enough trouble. They're like, we have enough trouble building a world a functioning open world on its own. Then now we got to make it online,
dude. Like that is a technological that's a behemoth of a thing. And what's weird is like they already had Elder Scrolls Online, and with Elder Scrolls Online, they're like, no, we're not doing that. We're not trying to make an Elder Scrolls game that's actually also online. We're going to make kind of an Elder Scrolls MMO. Which is what normally is like.
Yeah.
And then when Fallout came out, like, no, we're just making Fallout Online. You're like, okay, I don't know that you guys have the technical prowess to do this, but I mean, kudos for trying.
Yeah.
The weird thing is, like, the Fallout version is like the thing everybody like. I still remember when people would be like, when is Skyrim going to be a multiplayer, man? Like that was what a lot of people wanted. But Elder Scrolls Online is like the successful one, and Fallout 76 is the bastard. Like it's why we can't have nice things, man. I don't know whose fault it is. It was just like a clusterfuck all around. And now they're not supporting it. And another Fallout's like another decade behind. Fucking Elder Scrolls is 5 years out. Jesus fuck.
You know what? I'm gonna skip to that question because that's related. So that's a good segue. We'll come back to another J-Shub question though. Kiss Shack goes, if you could only choose one for the rest of the generation, would you guys rather have games that take 1 to 2 years to develop and have smaller incremental upgrades to gameplay and visuals, or huge leaps like Uncharted 3 to 4, GTA 4 to 5, but take 3, 4, 5 years to make? So which one of those would you prefer? Small incremental upgrades, but you get games fast, or big upgrades, but it takes longer for games to come out?
I mean, I just want the middle A versions of games. You know, and like more titles that can come out. They're good. They're good quality. They're not like trying to give you ever do kitchen sink gaming. You know, that's my ideal situation.
I'm of the mindset. I'm the weird one here, I think.
Are you always?
Yeah, usually. I don't just mean in the podcast. I just mean in general.
Yeah. Hey, Manny, can you move yourself when you're not talking? Thank you.
I want the 5 year. I want a big upgrade every 5 years. And y'all know my stance on this. Like, if you're not updating graphics or core gameplay, then all you're doing is putting in more content. And putting in more content could be DLCs. I'd like to see more games with an evergreen status, right? Like, why can't we get a big update every 9 to 16 months or 9 to 18 months, right? And then a new version of the game every 5 years, right? And like because like our conception of what DLC is really limited by just our fucking imagination. Because like, look at The Witcher. The Witcher puts out full game length DLC with new assets, new story, continuation. They're pretty much damn near self-sufficient. Like, there's no reason we can't do that. In the same way, there's no reason that most of these sports games that are coming out yearly couldn't release every few years with just a roster update DLC once a year for $20. It's possible. It's definitely easier for them to squeeze money out of you this way, but it's entirely possible. That's what DLC was sold to us at in the very beginning. For those of us old enough to remember, they're like, yeah, you know what, like, you know how like it takes several years to make a new game and it's got a bunch of new stuff. Like, well, what if we just kept giving you more game in the meanwhile, so that you didn't have that drought between games? So if you really liked Assassin's Creed, every 8 months you could download a little bit more content, and then on every few 3 to 5 years we come out with a new one when we really want to update the graphics or update some core mechanics of the game, so that each big iteration will feel different, but you're not starved between them. That's what I want. Yeah. That's the original promise of what fucking DLC was. Instead, we got fucking horse armor.
Oh, God. Yeah. Yeah, because Assassin's Creed games have been doing a weird version of this where it's like, was it, oh my God, Odyssey and Valhalla, right? I think it was 3 years between them, but they each had like fucking 4 or 5 DLCs, so you were eating well, when it comes to those games.
Look at GTA Online. I mean, it's an online game. I wish that they did the same for the story version that they did for the online version. But if you look at the online version, they keep adding content, but none of it directly overhauls the core product, which is why they can. And then the next time they release a game, it should overhaul the core product. I wish they had added some single player content. If they add single player content along with the multiplayer content, that would be the high watermark of what DLC should be. A game that keeps releasing content for 5, maybe even 10 years, and then comes out with a brand new fucking version. And like, I don't understand why that's not what companies are going for. Everybody wants an evergreen title. Everybody wants a live service game. Like, why not keep making content for games? Especially, after you put in all the time to build the assets, to, when you got the game all set up and all made, right? A fucking a homebrewer, a modder can then come through and add an entire DLC worth of shit on their own. I've fucking seen it before. Somebody's remaking the entirety of Morrowind in the Skyrim engine. A guy. There's another guy who's overhauled Skyrim into like another 200 hours of game. Granted, it's not fantastic because he does all the voice acting himself, but still, it's one guy. Once you have these tools built, you can do a lot with honestly not all that much. Granted, you can have a small team, they have to be talented, but a small team could, in theory, keep a game alive with content for several years, all on their own.
Yeah. Carlos, what do you say?
I don't remember what the original question was.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
I was following Brett and what he was talking. I'm like, okay, cool, yeah. I agree.
The question was, do you want games that come out every year or two but only have minor upgrades, or do you want like games with big upgrades that just take longer to come out?
This is an interesting question because there's the whole thing with, and I think I'm more of like this than Tony, but I think Tony kind of feels the similar way. It's like after a game comes out and it's been like 2 or 3 years, like the luster of the game kind of dwindles away. At least for me, it's like that. So whenever a game gets a DLC 3 years after the game originally came out and I beat it, I don't get as hyped. But if it's like, Elden Ring gets a DLC the year after Elden Ring comes out, oh my god, it's a nuclear event. Yeah. So I think I would go for the shorter time spans, a year or two after the game comes out. I feel like that's a sweet spot. If it's like 5 years after the original game comes out, at that point, I'm already expecting the next iteration of the game, not DLC.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what God of War Ragnarok is, 5 years after the fact.
Yeah,
and Spider-Man as well, right?
Both of those could have technically. I'm not saying should, would, or is.
Although Spider-Man did get DLCs, just to be fair, you know, they had 4 of them that came out right after the game came out, and then you had Miles Morales, obviously.
And that was like what, 2 years after the game came out?
Yeah, Miles Morales was 2 years after the fact. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's and Miles Morales, we all agree it's a DLC.
Yeah, it's a DLC. I don't give a fuck what anybody says.
I'm so torn on the definitions of that. I'm like, it's a stand. Like, to me, it feels like a DLC. To me, Miles Morales is the example of what a DLC should be.
It's a standalone DLC. It's kind of like the Ballad of Gay Tony. I think it was standalone as well, right?
Yeah. So was the biker one. I forgot the name of it. Lost whatever.
Lost and Damned.
Yeah. Those are standalone DLCs. First Light, Infamous, also standalone DLC.
Yes.
Festival of Blood, also standalone DLC.
Whoa, wait. Are gamers generally happy with standalone DLCs? Because from what I'm hearing, those were all pretty well received.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the fucking answer. Bigger standalone DLCs between releases.
Yeah, you know what? I think that may be the answer.
I agree.
Because I don't want you know me, I'm a narrative guy, right? I like a narrative to have a definitive end. But if you keep extending it with more story, I'm like, you're diluting the project. But if you have, this story's over, here's a side story to keep you tied over until the main next story. Yeah, let's do that. Again, it worked with Spider-Man. Miles Morales was fucking dope, right? I was like, okay, that's cool. That's what I prefer. You get a main game every 3 or 4 years, whatever, and then you get some cool standalone DLC in between. There you go. There's my answer. And I think everybody agrees. Yeah.
Wait, we agree. We reached a consensus.
Throwdown consensus. You don't get that every time, people.
The first consensus
agrees too. Yeah, all right, good consensus.
I agree. I agree. Though I would say Miles Morales is not it could be considered a DLC, but in
standalone DLC.
But the thing about it is, like, a standalone DLC also makes you think that you can go inside of Spider-Man and actually purchase the DLC, which you can't.
No. That's where standalone comes in. Understand?
But you can't purchase it from Spider-Man?
No, you can't. No,
it's a totally separate title.
Yeah. That's fucking weird.
But it's standalone.
So you should still have access from the core game.
It's not really. It can't be called. It can't really be called the DLC.
That's why I'm saying standalone, dude. That word is very important. We can't leave it out of this discussion. Standalone DLC.
But I mean,
DLC that stands alone.
it's not really DLC at that point.
Okay, we're not. No, yeah, all right. No consensus.
No, but I'm saying
then.
like, okay, so like, okay, in a situation, so like, here's like for First Light, right? First Light, you could go into Infamous Second Son and get get that DLC, and it appears on the menu of the game, right? That is considered DLC, but you could also download that DLC without actually owning the original game.
Yeah.
I'll go one further, Manny. I think you should get a cheaper price if you download it through the original game.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that.
Well, to be honest, it just seems like an excuse to charge more money for a DLC.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
they're not going to do that.
That's your boy Sony doing that shit.
Sony.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they already do that with bundle deals. Why not?
Wait. Miles Morales was announced as the game, not DLC. So I know, J-Shep, we had this fucking discussion years ago with the game because you know, and this is where the Sony fanboys started hating on me because I was very vocal about it. I'm like, I don't give a fuck if the game is sold separately. That shit is a DLC, and Sony pretty much confirmed it. It's like it was supposed to be a DLC for Spider-Man. They didn't have anything for PS5 launch, so they made that game its own game. It's a DLC. So again, here's the here's the problem. People think DLC means bad. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. DLC is not a bad thing. But everybody thought I was shitting on it. Oh, it's better than some actual games. I'm like, oh I agree. It is better than some actual games. Just because a game's DLC doesn't make it bad. But motherfuckers
look at The Witcher 3.
Yeah,
look at The Witcher 3. That's not even my game. Like a game that's my jam. But like the DLC in that is some like the highest rated, most praised. Like bigger and more expansive than half the games you buy.
Yeah,
like that's how CD Projekt Red built their legacy. Man,
I think it was Blood and Wine. That DLC is as long as The Witcher 2. Think about the entirety of Witcher 2. You know, so I don't understand why people just assume DLC means bad. It's weird. DLCs have been fucking awesome. You know, but you also get horse armor too. So I guess that's where that comes
from. What's that Uncharted Lost Legacy?
Lost Legacy was fucking dope. Yeah,
that was fucking great.
Sony has a really good track record of making some dope ass standalone DLCs, man. Just saying, you know, we put Sony instead of DLC. You know, shut the fuck up. All right, let's move on here.
Yo, man, you making fun of me?
Yeah, I'm not making fun of you. I'm making fun of these idiots on Twitter. You know, Jay Shep going back to another one here. Microsoft predicts Sony's Project Q, streaming handheld console will be $300, just like Throwdown predicted. Is this thing dead on arrival? The problem is every other streaming handheld costs $300. Sony ain't gonna make it cheaper than that. Let's just be honest,
bro. You can buy a Steam Deck for that. Game over.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't think you can.
I think it's 400.
Yeah. Is it 400?
And you don't want to buy that version of the Steam Deck, not with that shitty.
No, SSD, you don't. But it's still going to be better than this thing.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, we already talked about. I know Adam was like, "It's just dead. It's dead." You know,
this is an epic fail. It's an epic fail.
Yeah.
Why did they not include any internal guts on this? Like it seems like just a little bit more, and you guys could have had a new Vita. Like it just a little bit more.
Brett, we have a name for that on Throwdown.
The toe dip.
The toe dip. Exactly. Yeah. As soon as I read about this shit, as soon as it said streaming, nope, I'm done. Fuck that shit. You know?
Done and done.
Yeah. So
at first you're like, oh sweet, so it's a portable that does streaming, and they're like, that's not what we said.
That's not what we said. It's a streaming portable handheld.
So it's them not committing to anything. Nobody's gonna fucking buy that thing.
Dip that
seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the very least, they could have come out with something that worked inside the ecosystem of the VR headset that they also released. But like releasing two toe dip products that are completely incompatible with each other is a bold move, Sony.
Oh, the headset too, right?
Yeah.
Apollyon Neo, what's up, brother? He goes, Sony putting so much money into this handheld at VR, huge money sink. Yeah, I agree.
Well, we'll see how much money it is. It looks like it's a repurposed DualShock or DualSense controller, right? with a screen
with a
on
cell
it.
phone screen in the
with
center.
a cell phone. Yeah, was that a Nokia? It was a Sony phone. Don't they still? Did Sony used to make cell phones before?
Oh yeah, Sony Ericsson.
Yeah, so it's like an Ericsson in between, like a DualSense or whatever.
I mean, good on them for like trying to flex their manufacturing arm to do something that is, I don't know what the word is, exclusive. That like it's a good thing to figure out what is a company that you can do that other people can't do and flex on
Their
that.
niche.
Sony,
Their niche.
Yeah.
Sony's a
strong
hardware
manufacturing
company.
wing.
Exactly. Yeah, they're a hardware company. So why not play to your strength? Microsoft's playing to their strength as a hardware company, a software company. So yeah.
And as a buying company.
Yeah, as a buying company. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
They're flexing their biggest exclusive, money.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no significant audience for this. It's only the Sony fanboys that are gonna like this. I really don't understand.
The ponies.
It's only the ponies because it's if it was a Vita successor, that would be great.
Yeah,
I'd be willing to try it, but it's a streaming device. Pardon the pun. There's no life in this.
No life.
But bro, you can stream all your PS5 exclusive games.
Man.
No, but here's the interesting thing, right?
Let me just repurpose this quote. Don't people have phones?
Yeah, right. Yo, Carlos, you know what's funny? Like 2 years ago, if you and I would have heard that they're making a Vita 2, we would be like, oh, shit. But now it's like, oh, yeah, we got something else right now, brother. Yeah. Can you match this shit? Steam Deck boys, That man, Steam Deck, man, for life. All right.
Bro, I've never been so quickly sold. Like, I just want to nostalgia out here for a second and be like, yo, we watched that stream, and by the end of the stream, we had all pre-ordered.
Yeah. We were like, give me that shit, because it's the Vita we wanted. Let's just be real here,
Shout out to Kishak, who did a highlighted message, and he says, a new PlayStation handheld would be dead on arrival as well. They don't have enough devs to support that.
I agree.
Yeah, that is true.
I agree. I agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's just be real here. Blitz, please tell me you're in the fucking chat right now, because you're going to get some from me you rarely get. When it comes to handhelds, you know who dominates that shit? Nintendo. Let's be real. They kind of set the standard for that. Steam Deck's coming. Don't get me wrong, but that's hard to topple right there, man. And that's why Nintendo was slick. It's like, we do good handhelds, kind of suck with consoles. Let's do both. And it worked, it fucking worked. So good on them. Jay Shep goes, I think I saw an article that said Japan will eat this up, but I'm with you guys. Yeah, it could be a hit in Japan for sure.
Well, okay. Now, in fairness, that's because most Japanese houses aren't big enough to contain a PlayStation.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, like it takes up half.
And a TV, right? So you get the PlayStation, and you're like, where do I put my TV? I don't have room for a TV, and they're like, I got you, fam.
Yeah, exactly. So it could succeed, but to me, toe dip. All right. Yeah. Let's move on. Another question here. Another one from Mr. Kit Shack. I don't know about you guys, but the quote unquote discussions around the Activision Blizzard deal have gotten even more toxic, and I'm seeing more nationalistic takes in regards to Microsoft and how dare a Japanese company like Sony interfere in American affairs. How much worse do you guys think this is all going to get? To be honest, it's just a bunch of dumbass fanboys on Twitter, man. Saying a bunch of dumb shit.
No. There's some stuff beyond. Like, there's some stuff in the court case about people really coming down on the FTC and being like, why are you guys trying so hard to subvert an American company that isn't even actually dominating an industry? And like, I kind of get that. Like, the FTC is it's an American organization that's supposed to watch our and can protect our markets. And it does seem like they have an agenda that's not really the one that they're supposed to be following. So I get it. I think that it does have a bit of a weird nationalistic air. But like, I've even asked this, I'm pretty sure, on the show, like, why are we stress it. Why is an American group trying so hard to make sure that the American company isn't able to compete? It just seems weird.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, to be honest, it's something that a lot of companies do. I don't think it's just a Japanese company. I think it just in this situation they want to continue to keep their thing because they know what this would mean if they're able to get a full on a hold with this downloadable content. Like, again, like you saw how much the industry changed when Netflix was able to get a stranglehold, and literally every single company had to follow suit. Disney, all of them. And
yeah, but this one was on the stranglehold.
And they still can't even hold a candle to how much Netflix is getting, even with all the cuts that they had to do pretty recently. So if Microsoft was able to install themselves as the Netflix of gaming, it would totally affect every single person in the industry, everything in the industry. Because then Sony would have to follow suit, and I'm sure they don't want to do that. They want to postpone this thing as much as possible.
Well, then maybe Sony should work on their own streaming
because they know they can't compete with them on it when it comes to technology or software.
Yeah, but it's not going to create the one-sided. Like, and I would agree with a lot of this if it would create the dominance that some people seem to be afraid of. But like, it's not.
Here's the thing, like the power of Netflix is so much that it just it is the streaming and that's in streaming and that sort of environment is attributed to Netflix. It's become zeitgeist. So what if a video game company was able to do that? What if Microsoft was able to become that? And I think that's what Sony is trying to essentially scramble to try to at least, to slow down or whatever they want to do to get this.
See, I have a different idea. I think Sony was trying to, and I think it's a good time as any to bring this up. Like, I think that Sony was trying to put the nail in the coffin of Microsoft. I think that they were trying to basically oust them, and they came dangerously fucking close, man. Like, we have gotten news that is it okay to segue into this, Tony?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Okay, we got news that Starfield was almost a PlayStation exclusive before the acquisition happened, and you couple that with the acquisition of Blizzard Activision and how they were in negotiation and ready to skip Microsoft or Xbox as a console, and you have two of the biggest gaming franchises who would then be passing over Microsoft, as well as the current ones that were already passing over Microsoft due to exclusivity deals with Sony, like Final Fantasy, and you're painting a picture where all of a sudden all the biggest titles aren't coming to one console. Like, I was telling Tony before the show, I didn't realize how close Microsoft was to circling the drain. Like, those two big mainline games could have set a narrative that could have spelled the end for the console, the Xbox console. And I'm not pulling an Adam being all doom and gloom, may as well pack it in kind of shit. Like, this is straight up, if they missed these games, it would have painted a picture that Xbox isn't able to hold on to these things. It would have set a precedent that could have led to them just honestly folding. And I don't think that's doomsday scenario. And that would have been real bad for fucking everybody. And I think that's definitely what Sony wanted. Them buying these companies is so that they can make sure that they maintain access to these franchises so that they can continue to compete. And that was something that Sony clearly didn't want. And not just in this, but in their other market dealings. It kind of looks like they've been trying to, shove them out of the spotlight. And I get it. It's business. That's not like nefarious or fucking evil or anything like that. But I am surprised by how well it was working. And it kind of seems like Microsoft's only deal was to come back and buy this shit to just make sure that they maintained access to it.
Yeah, kind of.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Carlos.
I feel like, I guess going back to the original point, I don't know. I don't know how this whole thing where it's like, an American organization going after an American company. I feel like that's all bogus because
Japanese version.
Microsoft
organization, yeah.
No, I'm talking about Brett's point.
Oh, okay.
Because Microsoft has made so many acquisitions, billions and millions and billions and billions of dollars of acquisitions throughout its lifespan, and it's now built up into an almost $2.5 trillion company. Like they've had so many deals go through, and this one going through, it's not like someone's there's Microsoft's being targeted now. Like I just feel like something about whatever this case is rubbing some people the wrong way. But they'll get an acquisition in the next couple of years that's unrelated to this, and it'll go through. It's going to be worth billions of dollars because they have a lot of their, they acquired Skype, they acquired Mojang, they've acquired Bethesda ZeniMax, they've so many things. GitHub.
What was that streaming service? The Twitch version, Mixer. Remember that?
Oh, I don't know if they acquired that. Did they acquire that?
They bought.
I don't remember.
They bought it.
Yeah. Beam, right?
Yeah, Beam. Yeah, they changed it to Beam. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. See, Microsoft has a history of that.
LinkedIn, they acquired a lot of stuff. Skype, so it's like, this is one time when they've getting pushback for what reasons? I'm not sure what the agenda is, but it's not like, oh, the FTC hates Microsoft now.
Yeah, they've never liked them, to be honest. Okay, by the way, Brett, that's no surprise. Your comment got some reactions here, so I'm going to read them to you.
Okay.
So first one is from Blitz, and then I'll go to Jay Shep's one. So you can answer Blitz's one first. Ask Brett who put Xbox in the position where games like Starfield were going to skip it.
Who put them in that position?
Yeah.
Sony.
Okay, I guess that answers that.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who put Final Fantasy in the position to skip Xbox? Sony. They paid them money to not put it on Xbox. Same with Deathloop. Same with it's been shown that this is a practice that Sony has been leveraging for years, and it's been. I'm not saying it's like illegal or anything like that. It's perfectly valid business, right? And
Microsoft used to do the same thing. So
exactly. Microsoft used to do the same thing, it's working.
Wait,
that's the thing is it's working, and that's causing Microsoft to react. There's no moral or principle in this. It's just, hey, look, they were doing something that was succeeding at being, fucking vicious in terms of takeover and market share, and it was working. And so Microsoft responded in kind with their biggest exclusive, money.
Yeah.
Hold on, I can pull up a video here. Not a video, a quote. I'm trying to find it. Where they were confirming that
Blitz says it's their poor marketing position that made them do it, Brett.
It's a combination of both. It's if Bethesda thought that Microsoft had a big enough market share where selling on Xbox consoles benefited them that much, they wouldn't take a deal from Sony. Just like how Call of Duty hasn't been an exclusive game in how long? I don't know, because it does well on both consoles. But with this whole thing with Bethesda, Microsoft put themselves in a position where their console wasn't selling the most copies off of those third-party games, where money coming from Sony was a lot more enticing. So it's a combination of both. It's you don't have one without the other.
No, but exactly. But that right there is the kind of anti-competitive practice that comes from a kind of a quasi-monopoly, man. Like, that's the kind of shit that's not good and we don't want to see more of.
But we did see it. We did see it. Microsoft acquired them and made Starfield exclusive.
Wait, what now?
Like, we did see it. Like, Sony was trying to make Starfield an exclusive for PlayStation. Microsoft bought them and it made it an exclusive for Xbox or Game Pass and PC.
I think acquisition and just paying money to keep competition to a minimum, I think those are different things, at least in my book.
You have to explain that one, because I'm like, at the end result's the same. You get an exclusive.
because one is acquiring value. I can understand one is acquiring value as a company. It's acquiring assets, it's acquiring IP. The other is strictly paying money to make sure some people don't get to play a video game.
But
you just said that Microsoft did it. They bought it because they wanted the IP on their console, so they did that. But they should have just made it third party, but they didn't. It was their decision.
Yeah, and I do you guys really not see any difference between paying for exclusivity and acquiring a company?
No.
Well,
No.
to be honest, if you're paying for a company and you're locking it down, it's just the same thing.
It's the same thing in the end.
The only difference is that now you have a whole company that's making games for you, as opposed to just locking down one title per title.
Yeah, either way, you're keeping games off another platform, aren't you? It's the same thing in the end.
But the thing is, like, what's the point of an acquisition in the first place? It's to have those things to lock things down onto your side, wouldn't it be? I mean, to be honest, like I know, Sony's all up in arms about the stupid Call of Duty bullshit, but in a general sense, we all know what Microsoft's real plan with that Call of Duty was to lock it all down.
I don't think so.
I think no, they were not going to lock. They were not going to keep spend all that money to just leave it over to the competition.
Yeah, this is just speculation on my part, but I think if it hadn't been for the uproar, that shit would have been locked down to Xbox.
They would have locked that. They would have locked that thing down.
I want to address this because I think that's patently false, and I think there's a lot.
Oh no, I'm not saying. I literally just said this is speculation on my part.
There's a lot of information that counteracts that. Is my point, and that's why, like, I think this narrative that needs to be kind of seen more is like it says right here. Spencer said of Xbox, we needed to do a lot of work with partners given the competitive situation we had against the market leader. He also said that Xbox was worried about losing Starfield after seeing Bethesda titles like Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop head exclusively to PlayStation. Microsoft was losing access to games, right? Like, I don't even think this was about them impeding access to other people because it's a big moneymaker. I think this was about if they lost access to all the Bethesda titles, all the Blizzard Activision titles, like, would there be an Xbox next generation? There fucking wouldn't, man. And like we have proof here. We have things, testimonial from a fucking trial. Like, this is as solid as we can get, evidence-wise, of them saying under oath that the reason that they were going after these is because they were afraid of losing access to certain titles, as they had already lost access to many titles, and this was showing badly on them. You can sit here and say they intended to lock it down all they want, but the court records and the evidence say they were trying to maintain access.
Yeah, but we're not disputing that part.
No,
we're not. I'm not disputing that at all.
You're saying that you are. You're saying that the reason they did it is they bought it so that they could get exclusivity, and that they're just settling for this. And I'm saying no. They bought it just to maintain access. I don't think they ever intended exclusivity with Call of Duty.
To be honest,
again, that part is your opinion, and I'm of the opposite opinion that I think they would have locked down Call of Duty.
I think they would have locked down Call of Duty,
just like they locked down Starfield.
Like they locked down Starfield and all the other titles that they're doing. Like, if it's the thing about it is the key issue with all of this Microsoft shit is Microsoft's first parties are garbage.
Yes, let's just. And that's something. By the way, real quick, that's something Blitz said. That's something Blitz said in the comments. He goes, "What stopped Microsoft from releasing good games in the past 10 years?"
That's the thing about the thing about all of this. They wouldn't have any of these issues if any of their first parties were anything worth anything.
Yep.
If they weren't just hashing out the same old BS that they always have been
3 games,
out.
Forza, Gears, and Halo. That's all they've been doing.
The same games.
And I get
it. The thing about it is, like, they would if this is, they wouldn't even be in this situation. They could have been, to use Sony, not Sony, to use Nintendo as an example. Their strongest suit is the fact that they have a strong first party. They almost don't need any of the third parties that are appearing on their console.
Yeah, but no, I get that, and I do, and I also get that part of that comment there when you say, like, whose fault is that? Like, I get that it's Microsoft's fault for having poor business practices and fucking up so thoroughly, right? But like, at a certain point, you got to look at where they are and kind of go from here. Like, they are at a position where they are holding less than a third of the market share, and that puts them in a poor. Like, does that mean that they should just wither and die because they don't have the command of the market?
They obviously this situation, just like just them investing in all these companies, is to get something, to get some pump some friggin' life into this friggin' dead corpse, because it's literally
That's why we're not crying about the Activision acquisition or the Bethesda acquisition or the Double Fine acquisition or the people who made New Vegas acquisition.
Yeah.
Like, we don't cry about these acquisitions. My thing is, like, again, if I was Microsoft, I'd do the exact same thing, right? I get it. I just don't like how they're out there like accusing Sony of doing things that they themselves have done for years too, But of course, now they're doing it on a bigger scale. It's like they're not content now with games. Now they're content with, like, we need the whole company now,
And they put themselves in a state where they're in such desperation, where they need these third-party games, and they make it seem like Sony is the only reason why Microsoft is going to fail if they get Starfield or if they get Deathloop. Like, no, Microsoft was already in shambles.
Xbox.
And Sony was going to. Xbox is already in shambles, and Microsoft and Sony was already going to put the nail in the coffin in the console wars. So that's the whole thing. Like, and of course, Sony wants them dead. Same way as Microsoft wants to overtake Sony and make them obsolete.
Yeah, don't believe the tweets. Don't let the tweets make you think that they're all buddy. Like, they
no matter how kumbaya those it was a game show, the Game Awards, when they all got together.
I mean, to be honest, like, I think, like, in general, like, this is in general, it's not has nothing to do with the people that make the titles. It has to do with the management. And to be honest, like, in general, I think it's. To be honest, I don't think what's his face, leader of Sony and Philly Boy are calling each other, talking about all the fun stuff that they did on the weekend.
What are you talking about? They're laying on the bed with their feet kicked up, with their rotary phones, talking girl talk on Saturday night.
Say, hey, you know where I went? You know where I went? I went to McDonald's for the first time in years. There's no more dollar menu. Can you believe this, Phil?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I guess it's just one of those, like, I get why they're doing what they're doing, and I think that in the industry, yeah, I agree. Like, in the landscape that we have, like, that's their option, man. Like, I think the thing for me was just, I didn't realize, again, like, how close Microsoft was to circling the drain with Xbox, right? Like, if they didn't acquire these things, and if they lost access to a lot of these big franchises, like, and I know a lot of y'all in the chat are PlayStation fans, and you probably already wouldn't buy an Xbox, but, like, bro, if Microsoft didn't have access to any of this shit, do you really think they'd still be around by next generation? If they couldn't get Call of Duty, if they couldn't get any Bethesda games, the Ghostwire Tokyos and the Deathloops and all this stuff, even from, and see, that's the thing, like, we look and we're like, oh, first-party companies are making Sony games, but then we also look as customers and we're like, oh, third-party companies are also only making Sony games. Like, that, I think that we're not really giving enough gravitas or enough weight to that fucking situation. If you really sat back and all of your favorite game companies, including the ones not owned by Microsoft, weren't making Xbox games, were only making PlayStation exclusives, how healthy do you think the competition would really be? To you guys in the chat, some of you guys clearly straight up want a one-system party. And that's fine. That's your opinion, man. But, like, do you really think that if this went worst case scenario, that we'd be in a better place?
Jay Shep goes, he's just saying, if you're against what Microsoft is doing, you have to be a PS fan.
I'm against the business practices when either of them do. I didn't like it when Microsoft did it back in the day. I don't like it when Sony's doing it now.
It's the same.
Here's some Blitz that's saying he's been saying this a lot, and I agree with him. He goes, I could be a huge Xbox fan, and I'd be asking why the fuck are they so concerned with buying companies over giving me games?
And I'm telling you, and I've been asking the same question, and I'm telling you, I think the answer is access. I don't think it's been about, like, I don't think their onus has been, we're going to try and absorb all the games. I think their onus has been, oh shit, we're going to lose access to these games. Right? And at a certain point, like, okay, like with Activision, like, sure, they were pushing for a 30% profit increase, man. They're trying to take 30% out of the pocket of Microsoft. They're trying to change from 30 to 20%. That's a big fucking deal. And when you're talking that kind of money, it's not that unreasonable for them to push it up the line and be like, well, what if we just buy them? Well, right? Like, instead of just paying them more every year, why don't we just buy them and then they can't take it away from us? So, like, again, and I don't think, like, this started as tinfoil hat, but it's not really tinfoil. Like, I still almost regard it as that, but, like, they've talked about it. They've specifically said, no, this has been an issue. We were worried about losing access. They give examples. Like, this is not hyperbole. This is not guessing. This is fact. They were afraid with both Starfield and Call of Duty that they were going to lose access, and that was a major play in deciding whether or not to acquire the company. Yeah. That's facts.
Yeah, Kiss Shack goes, I haven't noticed any competition in the last decade. Why would I notice now if they were gone? He's got a kind of point there.
Yeah, no, that's savage, but true.
Yeah, he's got a point there.
Well, I mean, but again, like, they've still been there. And while I agree with the sentiment, and sick burn, bro. Well, I agree with the sentiment. Like, we are talking about a possible collapse to, like, the pathetic version of the console war that we already have. Like, again, like, is anybody actually going to sit there and tell me loss of access to these things wouldn't drastically change the optics?
Yeah, Blitz goes, where's my PlayStation version of Hellblade 2? I got one on PlayStation. Yeah, he doesn't have access to that game anymore.
No, but again, Sony, they're not hurting for games. They're not hurting for access to things. They're in a position where they can just straight up say, don't release on the competitor. And companies do it. Right? Like, we could live in a world where this is turned around on Sony. Yeah, but, like, that's not what we're looking at. And yeah, I get you don't have access to every game you want, but we're talking about access to a good chunk of the more high-profile third-party games. So, yeah, I mean, if they did make Call of Duty exclusive, they would just kind of be turning this around on them. But, you know, you look at Deathloop, and, like, they did. They made it so Deathloop had a timed exclusive on the Xbox. And, hell, we didn't even know that Xbox was going to get Deathloop until they made the acquisition. So, like, I have
a tinfoil hat.
Uh-oh.
That the whole 30-70 thing, I feel like one of the biggest reasons why these companies were trying to get 30% from Microsoft and not from Sony is because most copies of video games, of third-party video games, sell better on the PlayStation. So they're trying to, that's their way of negotiating with them, since it's like, hey, your console's not pulling its weight here, so, you know, if you guys want us to keep releasing our games in your console, let us have a bigger share of the pie.
Yeah, no, they had the high ground. They had the high ground. They said, you know, they're like, we have all the cards and your competition is offering us more. Fucking say something. And I think that's honestly why Microsoft's response has just been like, fuck it, just buy them. Like at a certain point, you're like, okay, if I'm renting a movie, right? And I rent a movie for $5, sure, that's fine. Right? And then somebody comes to me and Amazon comes to me and Amazon Prime's like, yo, I'm the only one that has this movie. If you want to rent it, it's going to cost you $20. I'll be like, I'll just fucking buy it. Buying it's $25. And, like, that's an actual real world situation that I've been in. So it's just one of those, I don't find the reaction all that weird to just kind of be like, yeah, I mean, we can get indefinitely fucked, or we can just tap Daddy Warbucks here, reach into the war chest and fucking buy them straight out. I also think that was Activision's plan from the beginning. We knew they wanted to be sold, so they floated a bullshit deal upriver and told Microsoft, take the bullshit deal or buy us. I think that they got exactly what they wanted, and they knew exactly what they were doing. Like, none of this is happenstance. The only thing here that is unforeseen was Sony's surprise Pikachu face when Microsoft's response was, "Fuck it, we'll just buy everybody then."
All right, let's move it on here. Mr. Syrian Air Force, who's also joining us in the chat. He goes, "Hey everyone, hope you're all well. Thank you for asking. We are well." First question here: did you see Phil Spencer under oath change the wording on Call of Duty releasing on PlayStation in the future? The first time he says PlayStation, and later on he changed it to only on PlayStation 5. What do you make of the bait and switch in his wording? I'm a little confused about this question. Do you guys know what he's talking about exactly?
It's that he's being kind of obtuse, and I think it comes down to, I don't think that from their point of view that you can actually say anything definitively beyond the play. Like, you can't say what's going to happen next gen, right? And even though they've said they've offered them a 10-year deal, so that should kind of fill in the blanks. But it's the further out that you go in their discussion. Like, if you ask Sony, like, what's going to happen with, or Microsoft, what's going to happen with Call of Duty in a year, they'll be able to give you a pretty good answer. What's going to happen in 4 years? Slightly less good answer. 7 years, a little bit vaguer answer. 10 years, the answer, like, the further down the line you go, the more vague their answers go. And that's because, like, yeah, I don't think you can realistically expect them to state that it's going to be multi-plat for the rest of time. I mean, even down to, and I know that this is, a far cry because Sony's never been able to actually make a competitor, but what if they did? What if Sony came out with solid competition to it? And then so they're the only place where you can play Call of Duty and this other game. Like 10 years down the line, yeah, we may see Call of Duty go exclusive. The reason why that doesn't freak me out is, like I said on the last podcast, if Call of Duty did go exclusive, it would leave a power vacuum. And most likely, even before it would go exclusive, there would be that power vacuum. So you will see competition do what competition does and breed the best competition in the meanwhile. I think to anybody who loves Call of Duty, that's kind of a win-win. Like, I would fucking love if somebody would try and dethrone Skyrim. I would absolutely love that. Like, you telling me you can make that gigantic, immersive, vibe-inducing world, but not full of glitches and people who look like they were born with fetal alcohol syndrome? Sign me up, man. But until that comes out, I've only got Skyrim. I'd love to see more people try, but nobody's going to try and touch Skyrim. Nobody's going to try and touch Elder Scrolls. It's the king at the fucking top of the mountain. However, now that we can be pretty sure, I know that they've said, oh, it might be multi-platform. Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be exclusive. And I would very much like to see somebody try and make a competitor to that. Because the last one that even said that they were trying was Avowed, and they're also owned by Microsoft, and they got into development and went, no, we're not doing that. We're gonna make a deeper game, but not much less expansive, which is kind of what they do. So again, nobody's made that. Like, why would you be opposed to somebody creating competition for your favorite video game? I would fucking love that.
I would love to see this Phil Spencer quote. So again, and I'm just basing this off of what you guys are writing in the chat right now. It seems like he first said Call of Duty on PlayStation, just PlayStation as in all PlayStation consoles, future and present. Then he changed it to just PS5. That would be a pretty significant change, you know? So, but you guys,
let's
yeah. But I wouldn't be reading too much into that, to be honest. Go ahead, Carlos.
Let's be honest. I'm with Tony and Manny on this. Like, whenever Microsoft finds it fiscally beneficial for them to make Call of Duty exclusive, where they're not legally bound to it, they'll make it exclusive.
Yeah,
that's just.
Did I say otherwise?
Yeah.
What do you mean you agree with them? Did I say opposite of that?
Well, I never say you didn't say it.
Yeah, you didn't. Yeah, he never said you didn't say it.
Okay.
And damn, what was I saying?
That they when it's convenient to Microsoft, they'll make Call of Duty exclusive.
Yeah, they'll make Call of Duty exclusive. That's why Phil doesn't want to be under oath committing to anything past this year or past this generation. So it's easy to say, yeah, in the PlayStation 5, like you could have easily said, PlayStation 5 and the next PlayStation, even in the next PlayStation, will have Call of Duty, which will give him just a little bit more buffer where he doesn't have to commit till the end of time. But that even by next generation, if Microsoft, pulls through and they're self-sufficient, the Call of Duty is going to be exclusive on Game Pass. That's just how business is. That's how these corporations work. If Sony was doing this, they'd do the exact same thing.
Well, it's whatever makes them the most money.
Nintendo.
Yep.
I would be surprised not to see a half measure where like it wasn't full price on Sony, but it's free on Game Pass.
By the way, we should bring that up. Some of these strong arm tactics, Nintendo mastered that shit in the 80s, man. Let's be real. Where like basically if you were a third party trying to put your game on another console, you would lose access to Nintendo. Like,
okay, honestly, fucking straight up, this is why I still think Nintendo is a piece of shit. I know that that's probably not fair, and that's some holdover trauma from my childhood and some shit. But for some, like, I got upset when Microsoft did it. Kind of got upset when Sony did it. I get it. But like when I was a kid and you did that shit, you go fuck yourself with a metal tent stake, man. Like they did Sega dirty, man. They did.
Yeah, but the point is, this stuff isn't new. We've seen it before.
No, but it's always been bad.
Oh yeah. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying it's always been a thing. So I just don't want someone to go, this company, they're the worst for doing it. It's like they've all done it, man. And they will do it too if given half the chance. That's how. Yeah.
I will stress.
There are no altruistic companies. Let's just say that.
Well, okay, and maybe it's just because like I'm a small business person. Like technically, my business is my own small business, but like that makes me super heated about certain things. Like, man, fuck, if you had a lemonade stand, it's different buying the lemon trees so that you have access to the lemons and you can try and make the best lemonade, and that you don't have to worry about that guy getting their fucking lemons. Don't worry about that. It's a whole different thing. Like if I were to pay somebody so that they would I would never pay clients to go fill up another competitor's parking spaces so that they couldn't go get tattooed by them. Like that's just fucking weird. Would I try and secure a spot with adequate parking and fuck those guys if they don't? That's not my problem. Sure, but like those two things seem very different to me. And maybe it's the difference between small business person and giant corporate megalith, but like I still don't understand how y'all don't see the difference between those two things. One is investing in yourself and your product, and the other is just straight up market manipulation.
Again, at the end of the day, it still leads to exclusive games, man. Like the means are different, but it's the end is the same. Like I get that you think the means is the difference, which is fair enough, but I just look at it at the end. So I'm like, you're still getting the game's exclusive, so it doesn't matter how you got there.
It's like people buy eggs, a certain kind of brand of eggs, and then let's say me and Tony buy eggs from the same company, and I'm like, I don't want Tony to have eggs. I'm gonna buy out all the eggs, so Tony can't have them. That's what Tony's doing, and Tony's like, I'll buy the farm, so Carlos can't have his eggs. Man,
okay, so let me throw out a real bad analogy here, a real bad metaphor, but like, if Tony and I both had a churro stand, right? And I had the choice of like, okay, I could try and buy all the best flour and make the best churros, or I can poison Tony's churros. Either way, I end up selling more churros than Tony. So it's the same, right? Like, well, no, because if you look at the customers, in one scenario, people get better churros. In the other one, they get diarrhea. Like, yeah, but there is a difference.
Yeah, but no one's getting bad games out of this. It's just you have to go to this spot to get the games instead of this spot.
Exclusive games are generally, they tend to have more money put in and effort put into them, whereas buying exclusivity just rewards mediocrity.
But what does it matter who's giving you the exclusive game?
But the thing, we're not talking about if PlayStation bought a game and made it exclusive versus Microsoft if they bought a game and made it exclusive. That's the same thing. That's making a game exclusive and trying to make that a selling point, right?
Okay.
You could try and make your well better, or you can poison your neighbor's well. There's a difference.
But no one's poisoning or making a game worse in this case. That's not happening. It's just, hey, you can't get the game here. You have to go here instead. No, there are no bad games. To use poison as an analogy, there are no worse games.
It doesn't make them worse, but it stops from making them better. Generally, when a game becomes an exclusive, it becomes better. It gets more love, more development time, more money.
Brad, I don't understand you. Okay. Well, let me try to understand this. Okay. So what is the difference between Microsoft releasing an exclusive and Sony releasing an exclusive?
Nothing.
Okay, so then your whole argument falls apart.
Let me change my metaphor here a little bit. Let me change it away from poisoning the well here, right? Just bear with me because I know churros don't have sprinkles, but like we're both selling churros, right? I can put sprinkles on mine, right? And people like those churros better, so I would sell more. Or I can buy all the sprinkles just to make sure that you don't get any sprinkles and still release my churros without sprinkles and still kind of like you're withholding things. And this is probably based off my idea, again, that when something becomes exclusive, you're getting more. So there's a difference between giving something a higher budget and just stopping it from being released on the competition. It's all about motivation. Motivation dictates how we act and changing that motivation.
But again, if a game being exclusive is the end point, what does it matter whether it's Microsoft or Sony giving you exclusive? You should, by your analogy, you should still get a high quality product because it's exclusive. What does it matter
because they're not making them okay. We need to define exclusive.
Okay, by the way, we're getting okay. By the way, just real quick, we are getting really off topic here because you are upset that we don't understand your point, right?
Not necessarily, no.
Not upset, but you want us to understand the point you're trying to make. But I'm like, every analogy you make is going further and further away from whatever it is we're trying to discuss here.
So let me take it back then. So, in your opinion, there's again like, and I maybe this is just a losing battle because like there is a difference between buying a product and trying to make that the best product and simply paying money to fuck over your competitor. The results show up in the product. And again, we're not talking exclusive from one company versus exclusive from another, right? Final Fantasy isn't a PlayStation developed exclusive, right? If it were, honestly, it might be higher fucking quality. Instead, they just decided to buy that exclusivity, and it shipped with a lot of mediocre selling points.
But that's, I mean, we have a track record.
Yeah, but I got to go back. So are you trying to say, and please stop me if I'm wrong here, are you trying to say that if Microsoft has these exclusives, they will do more of a job to try to make them better products than Sony would if they had them as exclusives?
I am saying Microsoft would be doing a better job of trying to make these products better than Sony would be doing if they simply bought exclusivity.
Okay, right? on what ground do you say Microsoft will make the games better? Because they would own them, and generally they put more money and effort, everybody does, into their exclusives. So let me ask you this. Do you think that if Sony owned Square Enix, that Final Fantasy would have been a better game? Because I do. I don't. I think it would be the exact same game. It would be the exact same game. We're gonna get to this question a little bit later, but those problems that you have with Final Fantasy XVI are inherent in Japanese game design. Sony is a Japanese game company.
You don't think Papa Sony would have come in and fixed that shit?
Nope. No,
if this were for a high-profile exclusive?
No, because those problems that you have aren't problems for AAA Japanese games. Understand? But
I don't see any other first-party Sony games releasing with such low quality of life.
Because most first-party Sony games are Western-made, man. Think about it.
I still don't think so. I still don't think that would have made it past Sony's Q&A.
It would have. It would have, because there's nothing inherently wrong with the game that isn't already indicative in other Japanese games.
With all of its exclusives.
But again, Brett, you're comparing Western game design to Japanese game design. What AAA Japanese exclusives does Sony make besides Gran Turismo?
I don't fucking know.
That's my point. That's my point. Final Fantasy XVI is the pinnacle of Japanese game design, man. That's what they do, you know? Western game design, Japanese game design are very different things. I don't think you would get a quote-unquote better product if Final Fantasy XVI was a pure PlayStation 2. You get the same fucking game.
I mean, it's we've talked about, like, again, like, do you think that Starfield benefited from being under Microsoft with their Infinite wallet?
No, I think if you're getting the same game Bethesda would have given you regardless.
That's what I think. Can't you say the same thing for Microsoft first-party games? They've had infinite wallets for those.
Yeah, but Blitz asked it. What third-party exclusive has Microsoft made better?
We haven't seen many exclusive other than fucking Redfield.
That's my point. You're making an assumption on that Microsoft would make it better. You know.
I am, and I'm making that assumption based off of historically the quality of exclusive games has been higher than that of non-exclusive games. That is
okay. That is fair
not
enough.
Debatable.
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing with that part. You know, I am disagreeing with your stance on Final Fantasy. Again, you can't judge Western game and Japanese games by the same standard. They're different.
No, and I can't definitively. And again, like, let me really clarify here. I am basing this on, historically speaking, exclusive games are much higher quality than non-exclusive games.
And I agree with you. But again, by that standard, it doesn't matter who gives you the exclusive. You're still going to get a really good quality according to you. You know, let me
make an addendum to that statement. Historically, exclusive first-party developed games are higher quality than their counterparts. That does not extend to bought exclusivity. Bought exclusivity leads to mediocre games, in my opinion, because it removes that necessity for competition. It removes that motivation.
Wait, so Final Fantasy VII was a mediocre game? That was a bought exclusive. Sony didn't develop that game.
Compared to what it could have been? Yeah, I kind of feel like probably.
Brett, let's just be honest here. Let's just be real. Okay, what was the other platform Final Fantasy VII could have been on besides Sony? You have two choices you had. The Saturn and I love the Saturn, which sucked at 3D, or the fucking N64, which still used cartridges.
No, I'm talking about the remake.
Yeah, no, I'm went back to the original. You can't say that buying an exclusive makes it an inferior product, because it's historically wrong. Final Fantasy VII, the original one, was a bought exclusive, one of the greatest games of all time. Metal Gear Solid, right? Also a bought exclusive, third party, excellent game. So that your premise doesn't work there either, man. And I could probably name a lot more too. You know,
I mean, there are definitely good games.
Yeah, what happened, Brett?
There's tons of examples. Like is Death Stranding, BioShock, Mass Effect.
What you want to say? This is what you want to say, Brett. What we've had is, when you have a developer only focus on one system, yes, that does get you a better result. But it doesn't matter whether it's third party or first party. Understand? If you're focusing on one system, you're going to get better results. But even
I don't think Deathloop was better because of bought exclusivity. No, I don't think. And again, that comes down to, like, the motivation. Like, when I go to you, Tony, a company, I'm like, hey, I want to buy the rights to this so you don't release it on somebody else. I don't have any motivation to try and give you money to make the game better or anything like that. Like, my goal simply here is to just narrow the market so that people don't have interest. But when I come to you and I say, hey, Tony, I want you to develop a game for my system, now I have every motivation to try and make that as good as possible to make the system look good. It's not even, it's partially about motivation, but it's also about access, right? When you buy exclusivity from somebody, you don't have say over the development process. You can't come in and make the game better. All you can do is adjust the how it releases and the platforms it's on, but you don't actually affect game development at all. Whereas if you own the company who is doing this, you do get to affect game development, hopefully for the better.
Yeah,
how do you know that?
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is, it is, if you're paying for exclusivity, that also means that you're also assisting with development. And in some of those situations, Sony has assisted the companies that they have done those sorts of developments with. So
that's why Bloodborne turned out so well, because it had the assistance of
Bloodborne was they paid for exclusive for a pure exclusive. In other words, they paid them to make a game for them. So is that like
they also helped develop it?
Yes, and they also have helped develop other games too. If you've ever bothered to look at some of the credits of some of the games that they were, some of their games have had. I remember one game pretty recently had people were getting all in an uproar because they saw Sony people were attached to it.
They gave Kojima the Decima engine, or one of the Guerrilla Games engine.
Yeah, Decima engine. Yeah.
I don't agree with Brett's point. If let's say last generation Microsoft on the Xbox One released all of the third party games, that all the third party exclusive games that Sony has released in the past, then that would be one hell of a console. It's imagine if you can say like, oh, we had Bloodborne, we had Death Stranding, we had Street Fighter 6. We had what was another one? Deathloop. Those are some good games. They're better than probably most, if not all, of the first-party games from Microsoft in the last 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, man.
All right, I want to move on to the next question. Assyrian Air Force, another one. I'm under the impression that Phil Spencer is tiptoeing Elder Scrolls 6. Like, come on and say what platforms it's on. It can't be difficult to nail down on platforms. It's because he doesn't just want to say it's exclusive. It's exclusive. Let's just be honest here.
Yeah,
it's exclusive.
It's the thing about it. The thing you know the deal. They're never going to say something before, even though it's obvious. We've seen it every single time. It's like, hey, is there going to be a Call of Duty? We can't talk about that right now.
Yeah,
of course there's going to.
Yeah.
You know it's going to be there.
Yeah, game industry is always so tight-lipped about this stuff. It's not like the movie industry. When a movie does well, the box office on Friday night, Saturday, we're getting a sequel. But we like Manny said right there. Are we going to get Call of Duty this year? We're not ready to talk about that. You've released a Call of Duty game for every single year since 2007, but you're not ready to answer that. Okay, but that's how these companies are. So Elder Scrolls 6, I guarantee you, exclusive.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, I think one reasoning behind they're not saying what consoles it's going to be for or any sort of release dates or any of that sort of stuff is to essentially keep that on the download, because what is their big thing right now? Starfield.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about the next title when we have when we already have the big title coming around? Once Starfield has reached its precipice, that is when you will hear about anything about an Elder Scrolls 6.
Yeah, in 5 years, they said, so we'll see. All right, another question from Assyrian Air Force. It's kind of tied into the first one he asked. What do you make of Xbox saying they lost the console wars and then buying up all the publishers, admitting that they lost a console war? And I've always said Microsoft's, it's Microsoft's. Yeah, their biggest exclusive is money, so they're gonna use it. They can't. It's clear that Xbox Studios can't make compelling games that bring in a lot of gamers, so they got to buy other publishers. We've been talking about this for years. I
mean, to be honest, what did they do when they started Xbox? They literally bought themselves into the game industry.
Yeah.
How many other companies do you see coming out just out of nowhere making consoles? All the other console companies, with the exception, they all start. I think the Sony being one of the later ones, but classically, what was it all? It was just people that had already been, companies that already were making consoles. And then Microsoft just went and dropped a bunch of money in. So they began that way, with by flexing their wallet.
Yeah.
What was their initial initiative when they first came out of the box? Who did they get on there? They got the creator of Final Fantasy to make two exclusive games for their Super Game console. They got the guy who created Sonic the Hedgehog to totally make a new character for their thing. Same shit.
Yeah, what's the difference between like buying a company and hiring a person? Like that's what both of it removes talent from the talent pool.
Yeah.
That's a legitimate question I've had. Like, I've kind of been wondering. I was like,
it's the same deal, right? It's like it's an exclusive of a sort, Yeah,
you're still you're still hiring talent pool out of one place and putting them exclusively in your purview where they create things for you. Is it really that different, like between hiring a person and like going through and like headhunting talent and buying these companies?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I honestly don't know the answer to that. But it seems like different levels. Like on the lower end, you have buying up a person, then you have buying up the company, then you have buying up the publisher.
Yeah, you're buying.
Yeah.
Well, if you buy the person, you don't get the IP.
Yeah. That's true.
So,
that's a difference.
To use Kojima as an example, you're only getting Kojima. You're not getting the Metal Gear franchise that he had anything to do with.
So is the IPs being acquired? Is that what people are upset about?
Yeah.
Because it seems to be this ethical
what else would they be upset about? They want the IPs. Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like this weird moral grandstanding where they're like, how dare Microsoft not pull itself up by its own bootstraps and internally develop new IPs? Like, how do you think they do that? By hiring people and paying them money. Microsoft, at the end of the day, is still giving money to people for video games.
They don't want them to buy existing IPs that are already on other platforms. That's the problem.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing. Whereas something that was classically a multi-platform game, all of a sudden just locking it down into something else. But to be honest, people have done this thing before too, where they've literally locked down a game that was traditionally on all consoles. Talking about Tomb Raider at one point. We're talking about Tomb Raider on both sides. Sony essentially having exclusivity to it, and then Microsoft exclusivity to it years later. Same shit.
Okay, hey, I got a question for you guys. If we have a second,
sure.
Would you prefer if Sony outright bought the studios that it was buying exclusivity from?
I don't want these
companies. They already have.
Yeah, they have. Insomniac, they just bought them.
With some of them, yeah.
Insomniac, Naughty Dog, the guys who made Little Big Planet.
Sucker Punch.
Yeah, but there's a lot of games that they've been buying exclusivity to as well. Let's use Final Fantasy as an example since it's the most recent one. Like, would you prefer if Sony kept buying exclusivity for the Final Fantasy franchise in perpetuity or just acquired Square Enix?
Well, like I said, they're Japanese companies, so it would be, Sony Square Enix, which is already funny because Square Enix is already a combination. Japanese companies don't buy each other up; they merge.
I know. So, I know you don't like hypotheticals, but I don't have another example chambered up other than Final Fantasy right now. So, let's just go with that. Like, if they could acquire them, would you prefer them to Sony to acquire companies or keep buying exclusivity from these companies?
I mean, since we're doing hypotheticals, I would prefer they don't buy exclusives at all. Period. That's what I would prefer.
That'd be my wish, but I would almost prefer them to acquire the companies.
You gotta understand a lot of the reasons why they're buying these exclusives is because they don't have that huge of a pipeline on their end. It's like we're not getting the same amount of first party Sony games that we used to get. We get 1, 2, maybe 3 if we're lucky, like huge Sony first party games every year, and that's it. So the reason why they're buying all these exclusivities is because they need part of their part of the year to have them in the calendar saying, hey, we got this game, trying to mask it as if it's something that they develop it, but it's only in their system, so it highlights PlayStation. And that's the reason why they're doing it. So I'm with Tony. I rather them not do it just get their own games and get a better pipeline.
Yeah. Blitz goes, remind Brett that Sony buying Street Fighter V exclusivity has led to a much better Street Fighter VI on Xbox.
Interesting. I'm not debating it. I'm curious as to how that happened. I totally believe it, but I think sometimes this can be a good thing. I generally would prefer, Sony included, just acquire the studio, feed them a little bit more money, direct the development a little bit more. You get a more curated experience. I don't see how having a hands-off approach and throwing money is better than having a hands-on approach, even if that also involves throwing money.
I do. I mean, I do see your point. There is sometimes the sort of the relationship between studios, like we mentioned a lot of times in the past. It's like, oh, Insomniac wasn't a part of Sony.
Yeah.
Before they bought them, and same thing. I mean, we were saying this. All of us were saying this when Microsoft acquired Bethesda. We're like, oh, they work good together. They they had troubles with PlayStation in the past, but they've normally a lot of people associate a lot of Bethesda games with the Xbox because that's just where they ran the best.
Yeah, and Brett, I'm with you. I'm with the spirit of what you're saying. Like, buy up the company and make the best game possible. I agree with the spirit of that, but I, in general, don't like, hey, let's just buy up everything. I don't like that. Make your own shit.
But as you said before, like, the end result is the same.
Yeah, it is the same. So, like, out of those two, which would I prefer? Probably just buy them piecemeal, because that way at least the company is still free to make games for other platforms.
Okay.
Yeah, because to be honest, like I don't
want Sony to own Square Enix. I don't want Microsoft to own Square Enix. I don't like that.
Yeah, to be honest, like I'm gonna say this as far as we're going in this right now. Yeah, it's happy fun time because we haven't seen anything. But what happens with all these acquisitions don't work because Microsoft's monkey wrenches.
Yeah.
Like they've already proven that they cannot develop. They can't get a handle of developing their own first parties, even though they fully created internal studios to essentially be the stewards of these things. Now, what happens if they're with these other studios? They start saying some stuff, and all of a sudden, the games end up not being what they were before.
Are we talking about 343 right now?
We're talking about 343. We're talking about possibly what happens with Ninja Theory or Double Fine. Obviously, yes, it's really nice when all the money's coming in, but what happens when they start to tighten the belt and start telling them what to do?
Well, I mean, Ninja Theory, I absolutely agree. Double Fine, I just want to state for the record, had publicly shit the bed so hard that they deserved bankruptcy. So I don't see Microsoft being able to fuck with that too much.
So
Broken Age was straight up stealing from your customers. Not cool. You don't deserve to be forgiven for that. That should be a fucking mar on your record indefinitely, you fucktards.
But I'm going to say, we haven't seen any of them. We haven't seen the fruits of the labor of the first round of Microsoft acquisitions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the big question mark above this whole thing. Still, I feel
obviously, for something like Starfield, though that game was already in development long before these guys ever touched it. What about all the other things that are coming? Obviously, Hellblade was in development too, but again, we haven't seen any of the fruits of this stuff. We're just seeing a bunch of trailers. We've been seeing trailers for like 3 or 4 years now.
I find it funny how Microsoft bought all these studios. You would have assumed they already had things in the pipeline, and that things would have come out fast. But again, I don't know how happened, but it just seemed like, again, optically, it just seemed like they bought them and they just started everything from scratch. I'm like, huh? What's going on here?
We saw the shit that was in the pipeline with Redfall.
Yeah, man, yeah.
Well, to be honest, the thing about Redfall, it was that was a game that was already sort of in development, but I don't even know. They knew what they had with the Redfall.
Yeah, but what I'm saying?
Redfall was straight up developed, and I had actually heard that internally they didn't want to release Redfall. Not Microsoft, but I can draw a name.
Arcane, was it Arcane?
Arcane didn't want to release it, but Bethesda or Microsoft was like, "Well, you got to have something."
There we go. 1 hour. 56.
Yeah. So
we don't need Adam, man.
I feel like a lot of this is there is still the chance that Microsoft could shit the bed with all this money they just blew.
Oh yeah.
But here's the thing, number one, they own all these companies, but who gives a shit? Because if you think about it, if they were to just close off all of Xbox, that doesn't mean they can't have all those games pop out on PC, which is or on their streaming platform. Like, like it doesn't. If the physical console of an Xbox just disappeared, they still have all these companies making games.
Well, and that's the crux of what the question was. It's like they're not worried about a console war anymore because they're worried about Game Pass. Game Pass is the future. Game Pass is what's going to be that's where the market share is going to be primarily.
How much do you want to bet that they essentially dropped the Xbox part of Game Pass?
Okay, so here's my question then. Like,
would they literally just call it Game Pass and there's no Xbox related shit to it?
I think they were dangerously, like, again, if they would have missed out on access to these two big games, I think that would have been the future, man. I think that we would have seen kind of Xbox or Microsoft detach from Xbox. So
to be honest, I still see them detaching from Xbox.
And so here's my question, though.
And then it's just becoming Game Pass the thing. Like that's it. Like, in other words, Netflix literally just becoming that. Just that becoming the thing instead of just the whole Xbox thing. Because I feel like even maybe the name could be considered poison now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So why doesn't Sony, like, okay, so like you have this whole big lawsuit going on, and basically a lot of people kind of went, okay, so Microsoft is killing it with the streaming service, and that's the future of gaming, and that's the thing that we're all worried about. So why is it Sony meeting them on that front? Is it just because they're not meeting on that front because Microsoft hasn't proven that it's an effective business. Which is it? Is it an unsteady, unproven business, or the future of gaming is going to doom Sony?
It's here's the thing. It's an unsteady business for Sony to not want to invest, but they are afraid of what's going to happen, what can potentially happen into the future if this was to take hold.
The Game Pass market share being within a phone, a tablet, a PC, a console, a TV is substantially larger than the console market share. So if Microsoft builds Game Pass into its full potential, it decimates whatever the hell Sony can do by selling consoles. But I will push back real quick. Sony is meeting them halfway with the streaming service, because they do have a streaming service on their own with those tiers and stuff. It's just not Game Pass like to the fullest, but
because their games aren't they're refusing to compete.
Well, that's just one feature that's different, but a lot of other stuff is kind of the same.
We all know that's the big thing that matters.
Yeah, but again, a lot of Sony feels that would devalue their games, though.
No, okay, and see, that's the thing. Like, so it seems like Microsoft's whole point here is like, we're going to approach the way that we do business as an industry to try and save our market share. And Sony seems to be like, well, no, because that's going to fuck us over. And Microsoft's like, well, then compete in that space. And they're like, no, that space is less profitable than this space. I'd much rather say you can't work in that space. And neither of us do. Like, I get it. It's probably less profitable for Sony to develop a competitive streaming service model. But also, if they're so worried that's the thing that's going to kill them, I don't think the right approach is saying, no, nobody can do this new thing. I think the right approach is adjusting to the current market.
And you know how Sony works. If Microsoft is starting to make more, be more effective at this, then they will be more than a toe dip. They'll be putting they'll be putting 2 feet in the water. But the thing about it is that, like, I think what they see is they don't want that brand association, like, so right now, like, even everything, a lot of games have association with PlayStation, even beyond them, not even, even despite them being multi-platform, right? The Call of Duties, for a while, Final Fantasy was always considered a Sony title, even if the marketing wasn't, directly pushing it toward that direction. Like Lightning Returns, it still did better on PlayStation than it did on Xbox, despite it being on multiple consoles. is because of that association. I think that they're afraid of that too. Where, in other words, right now Call of Duty has the marketing that says this is, it'll say PlayStation at the end of their thing, even though they don't have an exclusive. They have part of the marketing budget, right? So what if the idea became Call of Duty just by association, because it's owned by Microsoft?
Oh yeah,
no, automatically start thinking, oh, it's a Microsoft game, even if it is available on both sides.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I want to read some comments here. Kishak highlighted a message. He goes, Sony could destroy Game Pass in a Thanos snap if they announced tomorrow Spider-Man 2 would be on day one on PlayStation Plus and many other titles. Listen, this is something I've said from the jump. If PlayStation or Nintendo had their own version of Game Pass that's comparable to Xbox's, it would kill it instantly because they actually have something that Xbox doesn't have. Games.
Right. Okay, so then where is this whole idea of like that they're kind of putting forward like oh well, Microsoft has the possibility to just decimate and own the entire industry. Like, yeah, if you keep not competing, I understand that that's not the field that you want to meet Microsoft on because it's probably a less profitable one, but kind of feels like you're just fighting the future here.
Yeah, but the thing is, and here's what Blitz said, he goes, why does Sony have to copy Xbox when they are far more successful doing their own thing? Yeah, they are. Point. Yep.
Well, because the market is changing around them, and that's pretty standard. Like, you see that with telecommunication companies all the time. Like, you have to adjust with the times.
But
and
the
like,
thing
yeah,
is,
but here's the thing.
They should adjust now.
Yeah,
they should adjust when and if Game Pass keys off, because at that point they won't be dominating quite so much.
Yeah, no, here's the thing. I don't disagree with you, but Sony's looking at the present, and at the present, what they're doing is more profitable to them than what Xbox is doing. So that's why they're doing their thing, which is a traditional, selling consoles.
I'll go one step further, Tony.
Yeah.
I will say they're looking at their present, and they look at the future, and they say, if we get roped into having to do this, there is less profit down this route. So we don't even want to open that can of worms. The problem is Microsoft is kind of trying to force us to open that can of worms. And I think both Sony and Microsoft know, like, that is definitely part of Microsoft's business plan, is to disrupt the market. Because in the disruption of the market, they have more of an opportunity to grab market share. Sony doesn't want the market disrupted, because if they do, they have to pivot to adjust to competing with Game Pass, and that's less advantageous than the current place that they're sitting. Like they said, they don't want to do that because they don't want to devalue their games. They view if they have to compete like that, they will get less value for their games, less profits. They've straight up said that.
Yeah, they have. Blitz says Sony can't take the risk that Microsoft can. So that's a good point as well.
That's also it too.
They don't have that same money, yeah.
Exactly. Like you it's like, again, it's like they have you have on one end, PlayStation has market visibility, right? It is the top console. It is the one that everybody associates with gaming. Every generation usually has that console. That's the cornerstone. That is the console, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is the one they're also battling. They're also battling battling the visibility, because again, we have seen it before. Call of Duty has in fact turned the tides multiple times when it was associated one specific console.
Yeah.
In the previous generation, we know this 360 era, Call of Duty was on there. Microsoft in that situation had was the first one out of the gate, and they had that association, and people jumped over to that. Well, when it came around the other way around, in the PlayStation, in the PlayStation 4 era, then the association became that, and then everybody jumped onto the 4. So if that is a testament to that franchise. I know a lot of people seem to think, Call of Duty. No, but it's because I will say this: it has the eye of the general audience, and I know Adam likes to fight against that sort of thing. Oh, they're all hardcore, and no, it's because
no, they're not.
Call of Duty is the most normie fucking game out there. Let's just be honest here.
Yeah, just by definition, its market base is huge. I personally feel like this approach is kind of like saying, no, I don't want to build stronger walls. They shouldn't be allowed to use trebuchet. Like, it just feels like I get where you're coming from, and to a certain extent, that statement does make sense. But like, I don't think like they're developing cannons. I don't think you can stop the invention of gunpowder because warfare, as it stands, currently suits how you are winning. They're going to develop cannons. Build a better fucking wall.
I think the one thing about it is I think it just like how we always see Sony. It's just they don't see the reasoning to fully invest in it, especially when they're especially when they're doing what they're doing and it's working, right?
Well, let's be honest.
But that's why they have their toe dips. Right. That's why they have their they have the little VR unit, and they have the little their confusing PlayStation Plus system, which has streaming. Also, by the way, let's also add that Microsoft also just admitted that their streaming service is a piece of shit.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. Straight real talk. Sony has always been reactive since their very conception. They started as, well, we developed hardware for the Nintendo 64. They didn't want it, so we're going to react, make it its own console. Super Nintendo, excuse me. So we're going to react and make our own console. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Let's look at Microsoft on the other end of that. Microsoft decides they're going to try and wildly innovate, which means they just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. And 90% of it doesn't fucking stick. Yeah. So being wildly innovative isn't necessarily a better approach. I just want to make that super fucking clear.
But again, just like what was said in the chat, Microsoft can literally afford to take those risks where Sony can't. They don't have as much money. Real quick, just something Kishak said along to that point. The subscription model is the model where you have to bleed money for years before you break even. I doubt Sony could afford that for a console life cycle. I agree with that.
Yeah, well,
it's not only that. The whole thing, the interesting thing with Sony is a publicly traded company that has shareholders. Sony makes most of its money via PlayStation. Yeah. So if you change the game for how PlayStation is making a profit, it's going to send the shareholders to all frenzy. Even though in 5 years they might be kings, or they might still be kings. Because and then the whole thing with building the wall up, I feel like the orcs are gotta build a wall. The orcs are nowhere near Minas Tirith at the moment. So it's like
motherfuckers still in Mordor.
We have a bunch of people saying Sauron is coming, but they're not there yet.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I actually didn't think of that. Microsoft is more insulated in their decision making with their console because the shareholders don't give as much of a shit about that small portion of their company, whereas Sony is like the whole thing.
Think about it. Every time we do the Microsoft reports, Chris has to dig for the Xbox.
Yeah,
shit,
like if you look at it, like the Xbox division is their gaming division is the redheaded stepchild. The other stuff is the other thing that makes them all the money, all the stuff that sits on the surface. So obviously, the shareholders are like, "Well, we're still making good money." So we're sitting on the surface, sitting there like we're making all the money. All right, we're good to go. Now, do the flip side at Sony, where their film division which is doing a lot better now, which was bleeding fucking money.
Yeah.
And then they had their game division, which was making the brunt of their money, and then the fact that they also closed down a bunch of other divisions to try to keep their profitability. So yeah, I don't think they can pussyfoot around with doing investing into a streaming service.
Yeah,
they haven't even invested in a streaming service for their own content.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Brett, a question for you here, man. From Blitz, Brett is so worried that Xbox was about to fold. I think PlayStation is at a much higher risk of disappearing. Does he worry about that too?
Really? No, man. I feel like they're pretty much like Nintendo was in the 90s. They're synonymous with consoles. It's damn near a Kleenex tissue fucking situation. Like, I don't think that Sony Games is at any risk. And feel free to prove me wrong on that, because I will definitely change my stance if you show me that they are in real danger. But for the most part, like a good majority of my adult life, they've been default winner hands down. Like other than when Xbox first came out, it hasn't really been a competition, man.
Yeah, Blitz. I think you need to expand on it because for literally since the PlayStation, the first one came out in 1994, except for those rough years during the 360 era, the PlayStation has been the dominant force in gaming. Let's be real.
And Tony, this hurts, but how long has that been?
That's 1994. It's almost what was that, 30 years or something? Like that's a long time. Yeah, that's a long time. So I want to know how you're saying that Sony is in more danger of disappearing than Xbox. That's a little weird.
I'd say Sony's in more danger of disappearing than Microsoft.
Like maybe he means Sony's in more danger because Microsoft could just buy their way to the top. Maybe.
Well, Microsoft is not going to support Xbox forever. It's not an unlimited war chest. At a certain point, they'll wash their hands and walk away. Yes, is there more danger that Sony as a company would fold before Microsoft as a company does? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that goes without saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a situation where, like, if they were all in, Microsoft as a Papa Microsoft is not going to let this shit fly forever. There's a certain point in which it's just not productive.
And let's just be honest here. If Xbox division were to go away, Microsoft as a company wouldn't bat an eye. It would be like, okay, that's a loss. Let's keep going. If PlayStation were to disappear, Sony's done. It's over.
Yeah, because the rest of their company depends on the gaming division.
Yeah, they'd sell Spider-Man to Disney.
Well, right? It's a little bit different now because a lot of their film division seems to be doing.
Yeah, it was thanks to Spider-Man.
Well right
thanks to Spider-Man.
Thanks to Spider-Man, but
Yeah, but the other ventures aren't as profitable as the PlayStation.
Yeah, like they obviously they do have a lot of arms and a bunch of different things. They still have
Syrian Air Force. I don't know the percentage, but PlayStation makes up a large percentage of the money they make. We prove it every time we do their charts. Like the other divisions don't even come close.
When Chris goes over the hardware numbers, like the TV and audio, all that stuff, it's usually barely at a profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the PlayStation division
anybody go anywhere.
Yeah, go ahead.
You could tell that the PlayStation division is the king because they literally voted one of the the PlayStation president as the president of Sony at one point.
Yeah,
wasn't Kaz Hirai the president of Sony?
Yeah, he was.
International.
Yeah, isn't he still?
I think he is. He's still there.
I think he still is. This is what Blitz had to say over our question to him. At what point in the last 20 plus years has a competitor come in and bought up entire publishers and IPs that span many previous generations? Sony can't compete with that. They would probably go third party first, I guess. Okay, so I was right. That's what he's worried. He's like basically saying Sony is in more danger because Microsoft has more money to buy up publishers, whereas Sony can't.
I think if the market share were in Microsoft's favor, I think that would be a very real concern. But it's the opposite right now. I mean, I think we've been pretty consistent, or I know at least I've been pretty consistent. Like, I don't want to see anybody get to the point of non-competition. I want to see a healthy, competitive console war with exclusives that push the boundaries of both the systems and the genre as we know it. Been there before. I'd like to be there again. I think that I can see where he's coming from in the sense like look, man, if you kind of project a line, you say if Microsoft just keeps buying shit at this rate, that we could have an issue because eventually you run out of publishers. But one, again, talent recycles itself, even if the companies are bought. Look at Kojima, right? Like, Kojima's not Konami, and Konami doesn't own Kojima. Konami got bought. Kojima went fucking deuces. So, like, we won't see the erosion of talent. If anything, you'll kind of start to see this thing develop like they do in the tech sector, where people invent shit, sell it to a bigger company, bail, and invent more shit. But also, I don't think that this is a sustainable business model for Microsoft. Microsoft can't just keep throwing money at the problem forever. And if you look at the problem,
Phil said it on his on when the kind of angry Phil said it on the kind of funny thing. He said like we can't keep this stuff up forever. He's like at some point somebody's gonna say to me is gonna just say to me no.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, he did say that. Yeah, he's like somebody up top above me is gonna say something.
Yeah, so it's like there's only so long that they can continue to bleed. So I mean, the thing about it, again, like definitely the Call of Duty, the Call of Duty / Activision acquisition definitely is a very it's almost like a bigger. It's almost like putting a cast on a giant on a cut. You know what I mean?
Bro, I'm of the mindset of like, how you get that shit passed? Like you go to your higher ups and you're like, we need to buy Activision. They're like, no, we have spent so much goddamn money, and they're talking about taking Call of Duty away from us. Here's a blank check. Go make sure that shit doesn't happen.
I don't know if they'd said it like that, but I do think that it's like, again, like whatever again, there's all this. I think there is a lot of potential to what they're thinking, and I guess whatever Phil's saying to them. So again, and it's also again, Microsoft is also not beyond just buying companies in general. They've done it before with a bunch of other different services. But the thing is, the scary part of all of this, and I said this before, is any one of those things that they bought were not the same after Microsoft got through with them. Skype sucks. A lot of their services suck because Microsoft got their hands on it.
Yep.
So let's hope that down the line, everything was all hunky dory when it first started. But then down the line, let's hope that Bethesda is able to continue to make the games that they want to make, or they just become the Skyrim's the Skyrim / what do they call it? Starfield / Fallout company.
Yeah, well, the Starfield, Fallout, Elder Scrolls. It's those three cycling in perpetuity forever.
To be fair, it is going to be that forever. I mean, Todd Howard, he was talking about it in one of his interviews. He's like, I don't know how much longer I have. Probably like 1 or 2 games. I don't know what he said, but
he said this is going to be his last one, I think, isn't it? Or like Elder Scrolls 6 or something.
No, they were just doing the math, saying like you're no spring chicken anymore at a development cycle of 8 to 11 years per game. How many more do you got in the barrel? He's like, probably 2.
Yeah. So he's, for me, Todd Howard is sort of the life of Bethesda. So when he's gone, we'll see how that goes.
Does that mean is he the Cliffy B of Bethesda?
Well, he could. I mean, in a way, he is.
He is, yeah.
But I will mention one more thing about this. If this Activision deal goes through and it's successful and Microsoft, reaps the benefits of all these titles, the Overwatches, the World of Warcrafts, the Call of Duties and the Diablos, and what was that? Candy Crush, all of these games, a lot of games that generate a lot of money. Don't put it past them acquiring another big studio after that. 10 years from now, however many years from now, it's if they're fair, if they're well off, and Game Pass becomes synonymous with gaming, just like Disney did. Disney started releasing all these things, and then they bought a fucking Lucasfilm, and they bought Marvel, and then they bought 20th Century Fox. Like that's what these corporations do. Like, that's how they grow, and that's how they promise their shareholders that they're going to keep growing. It's just going to get bigger.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Another one from Mr. Jay Shep here. Jay Shep, I trimmed this question down a little bit, so let me know if I lost any of the context along the way, because there was one specific sentence I'm like, I don't understand what that means, so I just took it out. But so if that was important, let me know. This is a hypothetical type of question. Before Game Pass, Microsoft realized they could not outcompete Sony and Nintendo. Instead, they devised a way to use its competitors' hardware and platforms to their advantage, similar to the Windows operating system. Thus, Game Pass was born. When it became clear that neither Sony nor Nintendo would accept Game Pass, Microsoft's next strategy was to use leverage to get Game Pass on other platforms by acquiring successful publishers like ZeniMax and Activision Blizzard. This way, at least, Microsoft will have multiplayer games on every platform. I predict Microsoft's next acquisition will be the newly separated EA Sports. This will ensure its software on other platforms. My reasoning for thinking this is because Ryan stated that PlayStation relies heavily on Call of Duty and sports games as third-party games. Xbox's goal is to be the Avon of the gaming industry and leverage their competitors to push their software for them. This isn't a judgment, just a theory. What are your thoughts? I don't think. Listen, we've said this before. Microsoft's not going to make any big time acquisitions after this. They got so much scrutiny on them after this whole Activision thing. They're going to be like, chill the fuck out. At least for another year or two. You know.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, with them being these two acquisitions being so close to each other, I definitely think that they really want to. They're going to have to play it seriously low, because if this acquisition, caused the essentially caused the FGC and all the rest of the ones to get all piffy about it.
And
what happens
the
if they do it?
Yeah, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And again, remember, even the Activision deal fell on their lap. They didn't seek it out, because they got some attention for the Bethesda thing, but just having the Bethesda and Activision deal happen back to back effectively, it was like, whoa, what the fuck's going on here? So they are absolutely not going to be buying anybody big. They may buy some little fucking company or whatever, like nobody gives a shit about, but like big ones, it ain't going to happen for a while. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah,
but at the same time, I see where you're going with that, and I don't disagree with your premise. It's just it's too close with all this scrutiny. Microsoft does not want to deal with this shit so close.
I mean, he did just say the next acquisition, so we could assume that could be 5, maybe even 7 years out.
Yeah, that's what I think. It's going to be a while.
I think he's got a good point. I don't think it's that in its entirety. I don't think it's any one of the things that we've talked about in its entirety. But I think that you are correct. I think that as Microsoft looks at it, establishing guaranteed access and guaranteed streams of revenue that are unable to be cut into by your competitor, when your competitor seems to be practicing ways to try and cut into your market share, like that just seems like a solid response. And again, no judgment to either side. Like this is just kind of how business works. But like Sony, your job right now is to make sure that you maintain the optics as being the biggest, best, and really only real place for any serious gamer to go. And part of doing that is going to be curating the environment, making sure that you have all the biggest, best games. And if you're not the one making those biggest, best games, make sure they don't come out on the competitor. And to Microsoft, having the threat of those being taken away, like the reason that's dangerous is because it's a savage and efficient business move. It is a great way to fucking hamstring somebody. The only reason it didn't work is because they've got a fucking infinite pocketbook. And I'm sure they're looking at that as a kind of recourse to be like, okay, so if people are going to try and take away our access to things, how about if we not only don't let them do that, but then make us pay them or make them pay us so that they have access to the thing. We're not going to take it away. We're just going to secure an additional stream of revenue. And it's going to be up in the air. Sometimes they're also going to look at that and be like, yeah, I think maybe we should take away their access. If we're trying to fight the narrative of they have everything and we have nothing, then by us having something and then not having it, that fights that narrative. So I think you're going to see both. You're going to see certain titles that are acquired and kept third party for that very reason. I think you'll see certain titles that are bought and kept third party just to maintain access and revenue stream. It's kind of a win-win.
Yeah. All right, moving on here. Another one from Mr. J Shep. By the way, J Shep, you also asked a very not game related question, so just gonna leave that off the table there. Maybe the thing is, I would say MA, but it'll probably be outdated by then. But yeah, just for the main show, it's just gaming questions. I know it's tech related, but yeah, gaming, please. But I will answer your other one here. It looks like Google is testing online games via YouTube. Have you guys heard about this? I have not until you brought it up, sir. sounds like it's dead on arrival. Look how well Stadia did. You know.
I'm pretty sure they're going to use a lot of the technology from the Stadia.
They probably will. You know. Yeah.
I mean, that's what this is they're just trying to find a way to leverage the assets that they paid so much for.
Yeah, I wouldn't even worry about this shit. Look how badly Stadia failed. You know, I think there's going to be another failure. You know,
bro, this is clearly an idea thought up in a corporate boardroom somewhere. Like, hey, so we spent all this money on Stadia, but what are we doing with it? Here's my idea: utilize it on a platform we already own. Gamers won't know what hit them.
Yeah.
Yep.
This sounds just about as good as like games on Netflix. Who's gonna play that shit? You know?
Exactly.
I will slightly disagree with you guys.
Oh.
Just for the simple fact that YouTube is one or two most visited sites in the world consistently. So even because Stadia was just a thing on its own, but if you put YouTube gaming on a tab right next to your subscriptions or your recently viewed videos and stuff like that, like one tab, and it's like, okay, this is gaming, and I don't know, just a slight percentage of those people visited. I don't know. There's potential there.
Can't you say the same thing about Netflix and games?
But Netflix is nowhere near close to the popularity that YouTube is.
Oh, of course, but it's still
we're talking a game streaming service, not like a Twitch service, right?
Yeah, it's a game streaming service. Yeah, that's presumably what it would be.
Okay, so it's going to have like shitty Netflix style games.
Probably some bullshit browser games or something.
Yeah, it's a half measure. It's a Sony. Look, you come out with like fucking Final Fantasy on YouTube, people will play it, but that's not what you're going to do.
Yeah, maybe they'll play some fucking Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles or whatever the fuck it's called.
It'll be that Dinosaur High. It'll be games like that Dinosaur High.
Even less than that. It's fucking clicky bullshit games. So I wouldn't even worry about that. All right, and the final question of the night, that completely off the topics we've been talking about. My man, Jolly Yellow Nerd. All right, there's been some chatter that Final Fantasy XVI is so vastly different from past entries that it may as well not be a Final Fantasy game, or even that it may barely be considered an RPG. Do you feel that this is an issue? Should Square Enix be free to take a lot of innovative freedom to deviate from the norm of what Final Fantasy fans expect? Here's the thing. This is what I find interesting, right? Final Fantasy has always been a series where every game is different than the last one, right? Innovation is already baked into the formula, right? Now, granted, there were some standard things like turn-based and all that, medieval settings and all that. There were some things, and there's still things that are in the games, like chocobos and crystals and shit like that. But the whole series it's not like Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest, you know exactly what you're getting every single time, and the series is proud of that. It's like, yeah, we will always give you the same thing. Final Fantasy is always like, no, we're going to give you something different every time. So that's why I always find it kind of interesting where people go, it's not the way Final Fantasy should be. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Because it is subjective to the person. But I will say,
you have to admit, it's a radical departure. Come on.
It's both a radical departure, but also exactly like Final Fantasy as well. You know,
I mean,
on one hand, you have they literally said the producer had everybody on the development team watch all seasons of Game of Thrones. Go make it like that. So in that sense, yes, it's very different story, very different tone. But at the same time, you still got fucking magic everywhere, giant fucking magic kaiju fighting each other. You know,
they should have only made him watch 7 seasons.
Yeah, they should have just watch the first 6 and you're good. You know, oh my god, imagine if the ending is that bad. So I that the part about it's too different than Final Fantasy, a little weird for me. But I do agree that the RPG elements are extremely shallow. They're barely there. You know, there's crafting and customization. Not really. After every main sequence, go to the blacksmith, upgrade your shit, and you're good. You do not need to put any mind to it. It's nothing there. I also have a problem with the level design. It's just funny. And Carlos, I want your take on this specifically, right? Remember Final Fantasy 13? One of the things they gave a lot of shit to that game was like, oh, you're just running down corridors, right?
Including me?
This game is literally that.
Oh yeah, I played a little bit. I played a little bit so far, and yep.
But interestingly enough, that doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. You know.
Now let's be fair. There are generic enemy fights and cutscenes between those corridors.
Yes, there are. Yeah. So that's my take on it. It's like, yeah, it is definitely leaning more towards the action, and the RPG elements are very superficial. I will absolutely agree with that. But just me personally, I'm so invested in the story, the characters in the world, that I don't care about that stuff. It doesn't matter to me. So
there's a role. You play Clive.
Yeah, you play Clive, Jon Snow, as I like to call him. That motherfucker's Jon Snow. Let's be real here. So yeah, that's my take on it. I don't think. Again, I expect every Final Fantasy to be different, but I do wish the RPG stuff was a little bit more pronounced.
Would you guys consider Final Fantasy VII a huge departure from 6/3?
No. The remake or the original?
The original, no.
No, because it's still turn-based. But at the same time, it is very different because it's not medieval. It's a cyberpunk game.
That was it. Yeah, that was
6 wasn't medieval. 6 had all kinds of like clockwork castles and fucking.
It's steampunk-ish.
Yeah, steampunk-ish. But and then 7 went cyberpunk. But
only in Midgard, though. Only in Midgard.
Yeah, I know, but you know what I'm saying,
Yeah, but like outside, no, because I remember when I first played Final Fantasy, I was like, this feels different. Then I got outside of Midgard, I'm like, no, not really.
Yeah, I know it does become more of the previous games, but obviously, the graphics were fucking different, and all that. But yeah, so Carlos, that's my answer. Yeah, it is different, but not. Again, that's always the answer with Final Fantasy games. It's different, but it's not.
Here's my thing, though,
just like this one, it's different, but it's not. Go ahead, Brett. By the way, you used this as your time to go off on Final Fantasy.
Well, I Carlos sounded like he wanted to jump in first.
Yeah, go ahead, Carlos, if you want to say something.
Yeah, I was kind of going to mention the same thing. Something you iterated, Tony. It's like Final Fantasy 15 is similar-ish to Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah.
16 is similar-ish to Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
You can see the progression of where one led to the other. But if you compare Final Fantasy 16 to Final Fantasy 7, it's like night and day. So, when you're comparing a franchise that's, decades long, you are going to eventually reach to a point where it's like, unless you're explicitly trying to make the games the same, like you mentioned Dragon Quest, like they'll be different. And Final Fantasy always tries to make a point of making their games a little bit different from iteration to iteration.
Yeah, which is true. Go ahead, Brett.
I think for me, a big portion of it is kind of the vibe check. Like, it's tough to put into words, but Final Fantasy has always been about reoccurring themes. As you put it, Tony, it's kind of like each version is remixed.
Yeah.
Right, like it's kind of a lot of the same things and the same feelings and the same beats, but kind of put in a new way with a through a slightly different lens. And I feel like the big thing here, and the reason I hesitate because it's half steps, but I'll come back to that. Like, I feel like the big thing here is like it doesn't pass the vibe check. It has a big, awesome cinematic story with well-defined characters and cool interpersonal conflict. Check. Does it have a weird giant world brimming with mystery that feels alive outside of the characters? Not so much in this. Does it feel like there's adventure and mystery to be discovered through exploration? No, it also doesn't really feel like that on this one. Does it feel like I'm managing a party where my choices have a consequence on how that party interacts and affects in battle? But no, not really. You just kind of play Clive. So to me, it's a lot of those. You get some of those very classic Final Fantasy feelings, but also they're just missing the vibe check on a few things that I consider to be a foundational Final Fantasy experience. So to me, no, this doesn't feel like a Final Fantasy game. It's a great game, but like I think I can put it best that I asked Tony. I was like, okay, cool. So now that Final Fantasy is making Devil May Cry, who's making Final Fantasy?
Yeah.
And that's, and I didn't mean that in the mechanic sense. I meant that in like the vibe sense. Like Final Fantasy always had this kind of weird, quasi slice of life, mystical. Like it was always this kind of like soft, quiet, almost like nostalgia. It was like slipping into a warm bath, right? Like the nostalgia was there, the fantasy was there, but it was always new and interesting. And this one just feels like a really good story. This feels like if somebody made kind of a Game of Thrones inspired cinematic. I hesitate to even call it an RPG because again, you play one role and that's Clive. You don't really have a lot of choice as far as I've seen so far. I haven't finished the game, but so the vibe is just very different. And I think as somebody who deals with art and thematics on a daily basis, like that's almost exclusively in what I deal with, man. Like people come in and they're like, I kind of want like a skull and a clock or something. Like, okay, so we're dealing with like a memento mori, a life and death theme kind of, it's not completely untrue to say, when people say there are only 7 kinds of stories. So like I feel like touching on those themes, while it's kind of this ethereal thing that I can't really put a hard point on, the fact that I'm not getting some of those classic Final Fantasy vibes, the digging through a corally shore town to find, little insights into the lives of the townspeople and kind of getting snapshots as to this, quaint life where you kind of take a moment and breathe and it's all peaceful. And then the next thing you know, you're in this high octane, high stakes battle for the fate of countless. Like it doesn't hit all of those same beats, but it also hits new beats. It hits those Devil May Cry, let's kick some ass and be a badass. Kind of almost feels like there should be 90s one-liners in there at the end of some of these battles kind of thing. Like, so it hits new beats. It just doesn't hit all the old ones as well. And so it feels different. But when I say half steps, like it doesn't feel that different from Final Fantasy 15. And I think a lot of people are looking at 15, they're like, okay, is this the exception or is this the new rule? And I think this game kind of gives us our answer.
Well, yeah, I mean, 13 was kind of leaning toward 15 because that's it.
Yeah, there's been a progression in these games. Like I would say starting with 12. Right, like 12 started at kind of semi real-time combat MMO combat, right? Then we had 13, which was a little bit more of an evolution on that. Then we have 15. I'm obviously skipping the online versions. Then we have 15, which is like, okay, let's go even more real-time. And now this one's like
online. I gotta say, the online one, it feels the most legitimate old school Final Fantasy of them all.
Oh, 14?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. 14 is straight. 14 straight up gives you Final Fantasy VI vibes.
Even though there's other people there in the game.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's other people there, but amongst Final Fantasy aficionados, people still say that has probably one of the best stories, the best single-player stories in the franchise, which is weird. I will fully admit that, but like people way more hardcore into Final Fantasy than me have told me this on pretty much constantly. I want to get into it. I just I'm kind of weirdly enough, as much as I'm usually a multiplayer game guy, like I'm in the same boat as Tony on this one. Like
too much of a time sink, man. Too much of a time sink.
It's not even that. It's an MMO, but it's a single player experience. So like I like MMOs. I just don't know how I feel about like it being very single player, like, and it's very narrative driven. And like you go from story beat A to B to C to D, which in my online games, I'm usually used to more of a sandbox thing. This is a super curated experience with well-defined story, but other people are running around. I don't know, man. It's a weird place for me. But I will say the time that I have played, I was like, bro, this feels Final Fantasy. Like this feels like Final Fantasy. Way more than 15. I mean, shit, it kind of feels more Final Fantasy than 7 does just because of
remake, right?
Having played all the old school ones, you're like, this feels like the current generation update of the old Final Fantasy worlds that were made by the original creator.
Interesting. Manny, you going to say something?
Nah.
All right. Anything else, Brett, you want to say about Final Fantasy?
It sounds like I'm talking shit. I really do enjoy the game for what it is, but it just doesn't feel like a Final Fantasy game so much.
Yeah.
But I'm still loving it. Yeah. People are not going to hear that. They'll be like, oh, Brett hates Final Fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it all depends on what you look for in a Final Fantasy. Like I'm getting about 70% of what I look for in a Final Fantasy game in this. There's that 30% that's different. You know,
I want to get swept up in a cinematic story with just over the top visual. Okay, like now's the point where I'll pull out my Brett's talking shit on Final Fantasy. It seems like we got a second. Like the things that I was expecting and am not finding is like, dude, Final Fantasy I feel like has been a high watermark of visual fidelity for a good portion of its existence, and this game does not fucking deliver. This game feels like it's double A in some points. Things are artifacting, the upscaling is weird, textures are off, there's pop in, the quality of life is fucking non-existent, and some of the visual shortcuts they took are frankly jarring. There's a point where you deliver like one of the first fucking missions, like an hour or so into the game, and you know something literally 100% of the player base is going to go through, right? Like this isn't just some like, oh, you're in a random town in a random corner, and there's this little side quest. Like no, this is like the first fucking side quest that like it dumps you out of the main quest, and there's a person standing in front of you with an exclamation point. Like you can't miss that shit. Everybody's going to do this quest, and the quest is delivering stew. And you don't even have a character animation of putting a stew bowl down. You just kind of walk up, the screen fades away, and then you walk up to the person, and it awkwardly cuts to Clive from like the sternum up, kind of implying that he's setting it down. He's like, here you go. And it's just like focusing on his face. And then it cuts to a guy who's like, hey, thanks. And there's just like an asset of a stew bowl on the table in front of him that he's not interacting with. Where like it's just, it feels wildly cheap.
Yeah.
And for something that is both from a pedigree studio that has oftentimes, and I'm not saying like with assets and animation, but like oftentimes the visual fidelity of these things is kind of off the charts. To have that and a PlayStation 5 exclusive deliver, it just feels subpar, man. It feels double A. It does not feel like a finished, well-executed experience.
Yeah, no, and this is what I wanted to bring up because we actually literally had this discussion beforehand, right? Everything you're talking about now, and just to preface it, I am not making excuses. I'm just telling people how it is, right? That's typical of Japanese RPGs, AAA ones. I've always said this. AAA Japanese games are the equivalent of Western AA games. Those kind of things are little shortcuts. Like basically, here's 3 planks of wood, and it looks like you're just putting down a coin. Or hey, look, the chocobo's here. Go ride the chocobo. You see a transition, you're magically on the chocobo, right? Yes, to an American game, that would be very cheap. But to a AAA Japanese game, that's par for the course. Yakuza games do this as well. It's like, I'm not making excuses. This is just Japanese game design. Like Brett, when you first said like, oh, there's some jankiness. I'm like, oh, you mean that Japanese jank that's in every Japanese game? Like they haven't got rid of this stuff. No matter how pretty the games look, it still has all this stuff, and I'm okay with it because that's just the way it is. But
but most games don't do that.
Most games don't do that. It's true. Yeah.
Like I mean, you never like in any other titles. Have you ever seen the actual item that you're retrieving? No, you just usually see the guy literally just hand it, put something down, and then you do it. Or they always put have a thing switched around, and they always put it behind their back. They don't have a pocket to put it in.
Yeah, that is true.
There wasn't even that. There wasn't even that, and that's the weird part to me. Like
usual.
Manny's right though. You see that in like Assassin's Creed does that all the time. It's just like they do that. Yeah, you know that animation. It's like every game does that. It's like behind you and shit.
Link has more interaction.
Yeah. By the way,
like Horizon.
Yeah.
Or a game like Horizon Zero Dawn. Like how many? Whenever you do any of those fetch questions, what do they usually do? She goes, "I got your thing. Oh, thank you very much." Blah 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 blah. You don't see her give it.
Yeah, but Manny, I'm talking in a cutscene. In a cutscene, they do. In the cutscene, they animate the character models.
There's two types. There is at least a few types of cutscenes per game. There are those really, like the really arted up ones, and then there's those sort of half-assed, like like moment to moment cutscenes.
Yeah,
that
they're
are
not
just
going
like,
to do that.
meh.
By the way, Blitz says
They don't-
that Zelda does it a lot. Yes, it does. Obviously, again, this is a Japanese game design thing. But as Manny also said, they also do this a lot in Western games as well. You know?
Yeah, okay, but like the thing I want to like,
Yeah.
I agree with Manny, but Manny, I'm not sure if you've seen the extent of this, but like a lot of times in those, they will like take the in-game character and puppet them to kind of have it like, at least some very basic animation kind of thing. And then beyond that, there's a cheaper version where you can tell that there's like 8 emotes in the game, and they just kind of record the character model doing an emote every once in a while. This isn't even that. This is he literally walked over and the camera just cut him off below the collarbone and went, "There's your stew." Like there wasn't even like a
Brett, no. You see him from like pretty much from almost the belly button, right? And you see his arm go down and put something, but you don't see the exchange. Let's just be fair.
Okay,
That's what he does.
okay.
Yeah,
Bro, you're gonna hate Bethesda games.
Yeah, Bethesda.
No, but, dude, I have no problem with you jankily pantomiming something with a character model. Like you just reached your hand out and like tapped that guy in the palm, and I'm supposed to be believing you just delivered some mechanical part. It's fine. At least you can kind of make it like it would, to me in this game, it was jarring beyond that of what I'm used to. And I can forgive a lot. You all know I can forgive a lot.
Yeah, I just find that interesting because to me, I'm like, it's the same things I've always experienced. Remember, few games are like Red Dead Redemption. That one literally has animations for, there's bullet, pick up a bullet, here, hand this thing. Like, and people hated that. Like, this is too slow, Remember that, Brad? I don't know if you remember that. People were complaining about all the, because like if you go pick up something on the ground in Red Dead, you'll literally bend down, grab it, pick it up, and shit.
Yeah, but like even in Zelda, like in the cutscenes, Link is animated. It's not limited.
Oh yeah, but again, you can't complain when you're doing a side quest and the guy just puts something down. I get it, it's cheap. I admit that, but you can't expect a AAA experience when we're just handing over a fucking stew.
I mean, I can when most of the time AAA experience delivers me better than that.
They don't give you that. You don't see that in even Horizon Zero Dawn when you do on these stupid fetch quests. You don't see the actual object that Aloy went to give. You
guys are going from 1 to 100. Like, I'm not saying that they need to model the thing that's in the person's hands and you need to see their fingers wrap around it. I'm saying there is a bare minimum of pantomiming that I expect that I haven't been getting in this game. I'm not saying it needs to be perfect or even well done. I'm okay with super half-assed, but this feels beyond that. It's the same way. Before even getting a chocobo, I said, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but like, you don't have an animation of getting onto your chocobo, do you? It just cuts to black. Yeah, it does just fade to black. That feels weird to me.
How? That's expected. You literally expect
every Final Fantasy does this.
Yeah, every Final Fantasy game does. Every Japanese game does that.
Yeah, every Japanese game. And that's, I think, where some of the jank comes in. Because, like, yeah, but when you're like, most AAA games don't do that. Like, no, most AAA games, you get on the horse. It's a little animation, but you get on a horse if you get on a horse.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Fade in on a horse.
Yeah, but again, you can't compare AAA Western to AAA Japanese. It's not equivalent, man.
I absolutely can. They share a market. They share an end consumer. Right. I don't need to fucking give them fucking gimmies because their culture is to not compete with other Western developers. Like, that's on them, man.
No, they're do what works for them.
Audience.
Yeah, they do what works for them. All right. Well, by the way, that statement alone lets me know that we have no ground, the common ground here. All right. All right.
They share a market? Like, they do.
They do share a market, and people expect, hey, this is what happens in a Japanese game. Here's what happens in a Western game. You can't equate them. They're different, man. I understand they're in the same market, but at the end of the day, they have two different design philosophies, Well, and Japanese games don't have the budgets of AAA games, American ones, Even if they are AAA over there, you can't compare them, man.
I'll agree with that, but, like, I'm not the only person who's talking about this, so maybe they should have,
No, I get that, but those people don't understand everything, why this is the way it is, Manny, you're muted if you're talking.
I don't know, man. It just seems like belly aching over something that's not really it's like a total non-issue, man. I don't know.
I mean, it gives the impression of.
I mean, even your most beloved game from software games don't do the thing where they give you something.
Okay, Manny. Again, I've played both of them, and I'm telling you, there is a difference in severity between what Elden Ring did and what Final Fantasy is. Like, I'm getting frustrated because you guys don't seem to be hearing me when I say I played both of these, and this one feels just orders of magnitude worse. And you're like, well, other games are bad too. Yeah, I know that. But again, this one feels orders of magnitude worse than even the Japanese games I played. Ring is a Japanese game. Don't tell me this bullshit. Like
but Elden Ring does a lot of shortcuts too. But again, we're not gonna agree on this. Like you feel that way. I disagree with it because again, I'm used to this stuff from these games. So it is what it is, man. You know, it is ruining your enjoyment, which sucks. But
no, it's not. No, as I said, I'm really liking this game. I do have to say though, it feels kind of cheap.
Yeah.
But again,
fair enough.
We've all talked about I can enjoy things despite them having flaws in them. That's something I'm actually pretty good at. So I'm having a great time, but I can definitely lend credence to when people are like, this feels a little I get it. There are definitely points where it feels almost immersion breaking when they cut a corner. And to me, that's when you're like, okay, you probably cut corners a little bit too much because it was jarring. That was noticeable.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. All right, let's start wrapping up because we're almost at 3 hours. God damn. You know? There's only 4 of us tonight, and we went in. Carlos, Walking Dead stuff. What's up?
Yeah, make sure to catch I Am Negan on The Coalition and thecoalition.com on YouTube. That's The Coalition with a K. We do Walking Dead recap shows. Right now, we are recapping Dead City, The Walking Dead Dead City, which is the Maggie and Negan spinoff, which started last week. Tonight, the episode went live for the episode 2 of the season, and every week you can catch us on I Am Negan with Adam Vale and Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. Oh yes.
Good stuff. All right, people, make sure you follow Throwdown Twitch and Twitter. Subscribe on. Oh wait, I'll fuck it up. Anyway, Discord, conversations, rumors, all that good stuff. Throwdown Show. We are on every podcast app. Throwdownshow.com to listen to past episodes. If you're watching us on YouTube and enjoyed the content, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of when our premieres go live. Links to everything down below. Once again, I was your host, Tony Polanco. And tonight I was joined by Emilio Lopez. You're muted, sir.
Yo, man, I can't stand it. That rock, it's bothering the fuck out of me. It ruined my whole gaming experience.
Yeah.
See you next time, guys.
Carlos Romero.
Peace out.
And Mr. Brett Murdoch.
Remember, I get spicy, but these guys are my homies.
Love it, love it. All right, people, we'll see you on Thursday. Later.
Peace. Guys.